Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's about 5 after 7. And I would like to call to order this meeting of the Town of Fairfax Planning Commission. Let's start with a roll call.
Vice Chair Lamont.
Here.
Commissioner Ketchum.
Here.
Commissioner Kierline. Here. Chair Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Hall. Here. Commissioner Essett-Lofstrom. Here.
Okay, move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any issues with the agenda as proposed? No? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to pass the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the agenda is approved. On to public comments on non-agenda items. Is there anyone here in the audience who has come this evening to speak to us about anything that is not on tonight's agenda? Okie doke. Then we'll move on from that one. All right, on to consent items. We have 2 consent items, 123 Bolinas Road and 94 Forest Avenue. Unless there's anyone in the audience who would like to say something that would against our approval of these, or suggesting that we pull them from the consent agenda, speak now. Otherwise, they will remain on the consent agenda, and I will entertain a consent agenda motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so if anyone is here in support of either of those, they were just approved, and thank you very much for coming. Oh, there is an appeal period. There's a 10-day appeal period with a, $500 fee. So thank you very much for coming on those 2 items. And now we will move on to the public hearing items. So item number 3 is a public hearing item on a parkade mural banner. Can we have the staff report, please?
Yes. At the October 12, 2010 meeting of the Fairfax Park and Recreation Commission, the applicant presented a sample of artwork and asked that the Park and Recreation Commission approve a mural to be created on the parkade as a public art project. The site for the mural is 4 feet high by 50 feet long, and the cost will be roughly $2,000, which the applicant indicated that he would cover through fundraising. At that same meeting, they also approved the project conditionally, and the conditions were that there be a submittal of more designs for the mural by local artists. So they wanted some kind of a competition and to have more input on that. And they wanted input from the artist in residence on the process and the project, and they directed the applicant to do some kind of a public notice process. On November 13, 2012, the applicant asked them to consider a request for placement of a banner on the parkade wall to generate public interest and support for the future public art mural. At that time, the Park and Rec Commission recommended that the banner be sent to the Planning Commission for design review approval. So the applicant is requesting that the Commission approve the display of a temporary banner announcing the future location of the parkade, public art mural, with the phone number for Maria Baird, who is our, I forget her actual title, community coordinator. The applicant has yet to secure funds for the mural and/or start the process to have local artists submit their artwork. While the Commission could find that the proposal is the minimum necessary to serve the banner's intended use, it is the planning staff and the Park and Recreation Commission staff's positions that hanging the banner at this point is premature. The Chamber has also indicated that they've been approached by another individual who would like to paint a mural on the parkade. Therefore, we're recommending that this request be continued until the process to apply for murals is refined and updated. Hasn't been updated since 2007. So that would conclude our report, and the applicant is here if you have any questions for him. He also has the actual banner if you'd like to see it.
Are there any questions of staff? Anybody have any questions?
So just so I'm clear, the location that's proposed is town property?
Correct.
And in terms of the town, what is typical for kind of approving I mean, I know we've had other murals come to us, but they've all been on private property. So there's still an approval for having that mural. But in terms of, is the Parks and Rec Commission actually charged with identifying what happens on that property, or is it the town
they have
Public Works?
They have the power to approve the mural artwork and everything, but what the policy says, and I put a copy in front of you, it says that if they want, they can send the mural artwork to you for design review. What kind of threw a wrench into this is that the applicant has requested, in between actually deciding on the artwork, to erect a banner that would generate public interest and kind of advertise the fact that the town's looking for input and applications.
And that was my question. Is this an advertisement by the Park and Rec Commission, or is this an advertisement by an individual for a project?
I would direct that to the applicant. I know that he has an artist that he had in mind, but he doesn't have the final say over whose artwork gets approved. And Park and Rec made it clear that they wanted some kind of a competition or a process where there'd be multiple artists that submitted out proposals.
And in terms of the banners that fly over Sir Francis Drake, how is it determined what banners go up?
People come in and
When?
apply, and there's a calendar that our administrative assistant keeps, but there is a fee because we rent the boom truck, we share the boom truck with San Anselmo, and there's a cost for the guys to hang it.
And is there a review that the town might say that we are not going to fly that banner, or is there a determination for that?
No, as long as they meet the requirements for the length and the number of
Okay.
carabiners and how to make it, we don't usually get involved in what it says.
Okay, thanks.
So I have a question on the process. At the end of staff report on page 3, therefore, staff is recommending this request be continued until the process to apply for murals on public property is refined and updated. Are we in the process of doing that at all, or would this maybe be the beginning of that process?
The town manager indicated that the chamber wanted to update the process and that the town's going to be in favor of it. Whether they've actually scheduled it for a meeting, I don't know the answer to that.
So it's the chamber that would be spearheading the process, not the town?
I'm hearing all of this third party. Yeah, together. The planning director says it's in concert. The chamber will have some input. It'll be a public process. So,
What was the process for, I know there was like a little post, before the mural thing went up about biking, there was like a poster that was sitting there for a while on that, and I'm assuming that was public property. What was the process for approving? Because I don't remember that kind of poster thing coming before us.
yeah, and I'm not clear on how that, Morgan was involved in that, so it came to staff, right?
Yeah, I did all the applications.
But it was after the artwork had been decided on, correct?
Yeah, we went before the Park and Rec and got approval, and then got a building permit and got a permit to put a sign up.
And
Sign
the
permit.
artwork had been approved already,
The
correct?
artwork had been approved by Park and Rec.
I'm not sure if I saw in the staff report, it's a temporary banner. Does it say how long at the time it's proposed to be erected for?
My understanding is that the applicant would like some direction from you if you choose to entertain this as to what you might agree to.
Okay, so is there anything in the sign ordinance that says how long a temporary sign may be displayed for?
No. The temporary banners that go over Sir Francis Drake are only supposed to be hung for 7 days before the event. Sometimes depending upon when the boom truck gets arranged, they are up a little bit longer. We've also had people come in front of the design review board to request a longer amount of time, and that's sometimes been granted. So, usually not more than 2 weeks, though.
Has there been an application for this same, I know it'd have to be a different sign, but to advertise in the same manner for over Sir Francis Drake?
No.
Okay.
Where on the parkade wall is this going to go?
Again, I would direct you to the applicant. We had requested, we sent out an incomplete letter for this application and didn't receive the information that we had requested, so the applicant's going to need to explain.
And we decided to just bring it forward to get closure on the issue, since the Parks and Open Space Parks wanted to put it in your your corner. And there's a little bit of frustration, I think, on behalf of Mr. Lang, in that there's a lot of informal signs that have gone up around town over the recent little while. So we thought we should just do our due diligence and settle the issue of the temporary banner for him for right now.
Any other staff questions, or shall we redirect and hear from the applicant? Go ahead and tell us about your request, and then we'll...
Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission, staff, and fellow citizens, my name is Christopher Lang. This application has been dragging on for quite some time. In fact, when I was president of the Chamber of Commerce back in 2007, when we first started to get this project going, the town was in disarray in terms of public art. There was no regulations that were clear. And so as a result of my efforts at the time, there was a resolution passed regarding policy on the placement of public art on or around public land. That was for 2007. So that's how long this project has been technically on the books from Chamber of Commerce. So point being, you have a letter in your packet. I'll read it briefly so the audience can understand. Dear Linda, as you know, I endeavor to follow the rules. This latest go-around regarding the banner has soured me on dealing with the town. I apologize, I didn't listen to your older voicemails. I thought it was going to be negative. Thank you for being willing to work with me on this. My analysis of the sign ordinance actually contradicts your opinion. Since my banner is non-conforming, it is my belief that approval can be granted administratively, and the banner is technically exempt from your regulations, as it is part of a public art project approved by Fairfax Park and Rec, despite the nonsensical letter attached. Funding for the project is readily available, and the actual pink concrete wall, 4 feet high and 50 feet long, would not be affected by the execution of the parkade circulation plan. See page 17 of said plan. Funding cannot be finalized until artistic competition is complete and the design is approved. Please agendize this matter for the next Planning Commission DRB meeting so that I can hold my formal complaint regarding the Planning Department in abeyance. As you recall, I'm a volunteer and I only have so much energy to expend on these civic projects. Thank you for your understanding. Regards, Christopher Lang. So that's the letter so that everyone else kind of knows where I'm coming from. It's been going on for a year and a half, this latest go-around. And as a public art project, I know the rules specifically. I researched them. I'm very familiar with the regulations. The sign ordinance is a different story. That is confusing. My first reading of the sign ordinance indicated to me that a non-conforming sign like the banner, excuse me for jumping the gun and showing it too soon, I didn't realize you had so many questions. My understanding of the sign ordinance is that a non-conforming sign like this can be put up with administrative permission, and as the planning director said, there have been a lot of informal signs going up for Sustainable Fairfax, all kinds of groups. And I'm the one that's trying to get a permit, and I'm the one that's getting nickel and a dime to death here. There's no dime in it for me. I'm just continuing this Chamber of Commerce project on from the old, when I was ahead of it, and I'm just trying to get permission. And the key factor in all this is that the Park and Recreation Commission is in charge of public art. You, this board, and the town council have say, of course, but this is a preliminary part of the project. And so all this banner is designed to do is to be a piece of art notifying the public. This is the public notice part of the project. Rather than sending out letters or sending out emails, I got to tone it down a little. Rather than sending out letters or sending out emails or putting ads in the paper and stuff like that, the idea came artistically to make a banner that my son made. He's an artist. And at the time of that meeting, the telephone number was approved by staff. I did not take advantage of the situation or overstep my boundaries in any way. So the bottom line is, we've got this homemade banner. I think it's quite attractive. I can change the phone number on it, no problem. Point being that all I'm trying to do is get public notice of this project. And so once that condition is complete, then we can seek designs. Because we have 2 artists who are interested in doing it. Mr. Mott, the local designer, who's done designs for Fairfax Festival and did the mural on the side of Gestalt House, submitted a design. Ms. Baird has it, but it was judged to be too soon to decide on a design. The Park and Rec Commission wanted to get input from other artists, which I wholeheartedly support. So all this is doing is to try to notify the public who drive by there that something is coming, something's going to be happening there. That's all it is. And my thought was...
Can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
Isn't it are you asking for money with this, or are you just, why is there a phone number?
Because that was a phone number for Maria Baird, and she could say, she has the Mott designer packet, she's got my letter, she says, someone calls the number, she said, oh yeah, we're going to have a mural, give me your name and number, and we'll put you into the loop.
So
that's all, it's just
So the
contact.
advertisement is to invite artists to create a mural, not to raise the $2,000 that's necessary to, my impression is this is about raising money, not about, raising money for the project, not about, that's my confusion, is it seems like an advertisement to raise the $2,000 you need to do the project.
No, not at all.
Then what, then?
There's 3 phases to the project. One is public notice, one is getting designs from artists, and the third is approving the designs from the artists. Those are the 3 steps the Park and Recreation Commission has asked for.
This is public notice?
That's all it is.
Is it a process approved by the town for public notice?
Excuse me?
Is this a process approved by the town for public notice?
No, this is the process that I came up with to get the public's attention, to draw their attention to that pink wall. And I've waited, I've analyzed the circulation element for downtown Fairfax that planning director so kindly gave me, and we've looked at all the improvements that are going to be made down there. If we can raise $100,000 and not get the matching $300, that's not my department.
So
the pink wall will not be affected by construction.
That was my question, is what design do you have in hand that says the pink wall won't be affected by construction?
The parkade circulation element plan on page 17. It's in the letter.
In your letter?
If you analyze the document, you'll see any changes and additions and construction in that area will not affect the pink wall. I was the planning commissioner for 5.5 years. I analyzed the document. I'm confident that I'm correct.
But that's not a plan. I mean, it's a plan, not a design. So those aren't.
It may never even get built at all. So what?
Exactly.
I'm not worried about the pink wall. It's the newest thing down there. It's probably not going to get wrecked.
Question, I don't know whether it's to you or to you. Has the site been approved by the appropriate approval body for a mural of some sort to be determined through some process, or has that not even happened?
The Park and Rec Commission approved the concept in the location that Chris is proposing, but they wanted more information.
So the site, the existence of a mural at some future date through some to-be-determined process has been approved. It's the...
From reading their minutes and talking to Maria, and I attached their minutes for your review, that's what it sounds like to me, that it...
But just so I understand, does that become a constraint for the town if you're going into design around the parkade that you would then have to plan around, or is it not a constraint down the road?
I think what Mr. Lang was alluding to is that the wall itself is not going to be reconstructed in the improvements to the parkade when they come. And just to back up a second, I think what the Parks and Recreation Department and what we had concerns about was they approved the concept of a mural in that location, but they haven't given it approval because they haven't seen the artwork. So approving something in concept is much different than actually approving something. And that was our position also. And we, again, all the history is behind us now, and it's just before you, this very narrow decision, is Mr. Lang allowed to put the temporary sign up advertising the issue of a mural that needs to be developed that would go there, presumably, if it's approved.
So one question I have is, how long would you envision hanging the sign up?
I don't have a set plan. I thought that since most parents are away perhaps on summer vacation, now is not the optimal time to hang the banner. And I was thinking, since the banner is an artistic response to the request for notifying the public, that's all it is. It's not a fundraising mechanism. It's a communication device. I thought it would be appropriate to hang it for 2 weeks at the beginning of the summer, and 2 weeks at the end of the summer, and maybe 2 weeks in the fall, so that make sure everybody knows something's going to be happening there. In the meantime, I could solicit the artistic designs, because we really only need 3 or 4. It's not that big a deal.
In terms of just the content of the sign, future site of the parkade mural and a phone number, if I'm driving by, to me it doesn't scream, we're soliciting art designs. I think just seeing it as something's going to go up here, and maybe if somebody's curious and they call, but if the purpose of the sign, again, I think clarification is, do we need funding, or do we use this as a tool to solicit art? If we're using it as a tool to solicit art, I don't think it really gives that message. So I think if we're trying to generate interest from artists to get things in, to get a design process rolling, I would almost say we'd want something different in content.
If I may respond through the chair?
Sure, and then we'll just continue with questions, and then we'll...
Yeah, I agree with you. But that's not the point of the sign. The point is not really to solicit artwork. It's to notify people something's going to happen there, so no one gets surprised and no one gets upset, and no one gets hard feelings. I didn't know about it. What do you think you're doing over there? There's a lot of reactionary people in this town. You'd be surprised. When I was president of the Chamber of Commerce, I went door to door through this whole town. You know, that's all it is. It's a way to notify the public. The artistic designs, man, that's a piece of cake. That's not what it's for. It's just so there's no surprise coming, so there's no hard feelings.
Question about the phone number and the potential volume of response that this may or may not elicit. Again, whose phone number is it? Does a town staff person or is the Park and Rec willing to be responsible for responding to the public awareness raising that will go on? Was there a specific request for a different phone number? Could you?
Maria Baird is a part-time employee of the town. And again, there has not been a formal design put forward. If and when a formal design comes forward that the Parks and Recreation Department approves, that is a public process at that event. They can either then just go with that or pass it up to you again for this approval. So there's a process that will happen.
I get that process. I'm just trying to find out, before that whole process happens, the intent of raising awareness before that process happens so that people can engage with that process. I'm just wondering, this phone, the intent is somebody to...
I think I can address that. I attached the staff report written by Maria Baird. It's her phone number for the November 13th meeting. And in it she says, Mr. Lang placed the banner up temporarily during the Halloween parade. The banner does not include a sketch of the future mural or design or accurate contact information. So that's her saying...
Okay, I believe I can answer that confusion. I think
her phone number is the accurate...
Okay.
If I may?
Yep.
Through the chair. Town artist suggested I put that phone number on there.
Okay.
It was an informal process.
Okay.
At the meeting itself.
Okay. So the phone number is in question, the phone number is in question, because certainly you stick a banner someplace, you're going to...
I could put my phone number on it gladly. I just didn't think, I wasn't sure if that was appropriate. And they said, do this. I'd listen to town artists. I'd listen to her.
That's helpful.
Madam Chair, may I suggest you complete hearing from the applicant and then bring it up for discussion?
Are there any other specific questions, and then we'll bring it back for discussion?
Yes. So over the past 3 years, the entire discussion seems to be about whether to advertise about the mural rather than actually doing the process to come up with the mural. If you were coming to us today, this is my opinion, with the proposed mural, it'd be a really short, simple discussion. And I'm trying to understand why it's been 2.5 to 3 years to try to get a banner that is advertising a site for a mural rather than here's the mural that the Park Commission has approved and recommended. That's my, because it said that the reason for this was the need to raise $2,000. And you're telling me now that there's not a need to raise $2,000. So over the last 2.5 years, why is the argument about putting up a banner that says future site of a mural rather than having a proposal for a mural?
That is a really good question. And mayhaps we need to do a little house cleaning around here, be more user-friendly. Why has this guy back here been waiting a year to get his permit to buy a building? It's the same old red tape, buddy. All I'm trying to do is an art project, okay? I'm taking direction. If I may finish, please. Thank you. If I may finish, all I'm trying to do, I just explained it. There's reactionary old people down in town. I just wanted to give them notice. I'm not going door to door like I've done before. This was an innovative, artistic way to notice the public that something was going to be happening. Okay. That's all it is.
Yeah. And I'd just like to say, in 2010, the Park Commission said, submit more designs for the mural, get input input from the artists and residents and public notice process. You're doing the public notice process before you've done the other two items. The public notice process is after you've said, here's what we're doing. This is the proposal. That's all.
Any other questions?
I wasn't sure the list was consecutive. Apologies.
Any other questions? And then we will bring it back.
So I understand why you want to put the banner there, but there are some other really simple conduits for communication within our town, whether it's an announcement through the Ross Valley Reporter, or using the banner that goes over the road,
Costs
or
money.
if you're eliciting, if you're asking for people to become aware of things. There's lots of ways to do it without having to, go through the process that you've had to go through. And so I'm just wondering, what is it? Is it just because you want it on the actual location of the mural? This is where it's going to be, rather than just telling people we're looking for designs for a mural on the parkade wall.
It's the same as the
Not that
repack
many
mosaic
parkade
sign.
walls,
It's the same as the repack mosaic sign. It's on the site, and it's a sign saying something's coming. That design was final, this one's not. I don't believe I jumped the gun by trying to do public notice before getting all the designs, frankly.
Okay. We'll bring it, unless there's any more questions. You have a question for the applicant? Okay.
Is there an organization that's backing this project?
Originally, it was the Fairfax Chamber of Commerce. It was approved by the board. It sat in abeyance, so it's not currently on the board's agenda, but I did carry that item for at least 3 years.
So you say the board of the chamber approved what specifically?
A parkade mural, subject to conditions of Park and Recreation Commission, and subject to us finding funding for it after all the design was finalized.
So if this sign were to go up, and the number of, Maria Baird's number is there on the mural, on the sign, it's implied that this is a town project.
It's on town property. Belongs to everybody.
I know, but it implies that it's a town of Fairfax project, like the mosaic was a Chamber of Commerce project. So you're clear on that? And then,
I just thought it was appropriate for Park and Rec staff to field a few calls. I don't think the phone was going to be ringing off the hook.
and you,
I think we can bring back to discussion what the appropriate is if there's a question about this. No? Okay. So now we're going to bring it back to the commission to have the conversation about it. Oh, public comment first. Sorry. Actually, before we do that, we'll take public comment. So if there's anyone here who would like to get up and speak to this particular item, come up to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to make a comment. Okay, now I will bring it back to the commission for discussion. So, so what's before us is approval of continuance, if we want to go with the staff, or what we want to do with this, continuance of this until time as recommended by the staff, or?
I just have one more question for staff on, and I'm just trying to understand the difference. I get it when it's a private property and an applicant for a mural on private property. The applicant is probably the owner of that building or somebody to that effect. Wouldn't the applicant be the Parks and Rec Commission for something like this on public property? I don't understand why the commission wouldn't be the applicant, because they're the body that's been appointed to review it. Because it's a...
You know, I think they probably could have made the application, but they chose to direct Chris to come to, he showed up with the sign, and they directed the sign to come to you because you're now the design review board.
Right.
Design review approves exceptions to the sign ordinance regulations, and this is an exception to the sign ordinance regulation.
But if it was so maybe it's thinking about
They directed
if there's a
him.
redoing a process, that seems to me to be the an appropriate means of having an application made. They've
Well,
vetted it.
I think this kind of uncovers why the
Right.
process needs to be updated, because
Right.
it isn't well laid out, and obviously Chris was confused, staff was confused.
Right. Okay.
And I think when they put their conditions on, you hit the nail on the head, that they didn't make it clear to him what the order was going to be. And so he didn't have direction from them as to what order he was supposed to do things in, and this is what he took to be advertising, notifying the
notice.
public.
Right. Okay.
Well, I personally, I support the idea of giving public notice prior to having a selection process. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and I agree with the fact that it is good to not surprise people with a process that they might want to be engaged in helping to select, or whatever that process is. So I do agree with that. I'm not comfortable with the lack of clarity as to who is managing the project, who kind of has that, as you mentioned before, what is the body, which is clearly unclear because of the phone number issue, because there is going to be a response, and it doesn't really seem like there's an authorized body who wants to take ownership of that public communication process prior to having it. If there was, the Parks and Rec would have been here saying, yes, we want the public to know about this, here's our phone number, put it on the banner. All we would have maybe been approving is the design review of the banner, and then we could be talking about the design of the banner and whether we like it or not. But I have a hard time
And I think
putting up a
someone
banner
would
with a
take
weird-
ownership over it if the artwork had been chosen, because that's how the repack artwork worked. They chose something first, then the sign went up, and there were people that had taken ownership of creating it.
Which I understand, but I also think it's okay to have them have ownership without having a design decided, because what I'm hearing is if it's a done deal, then people feel it's disingenuous notice because they weren't noticed that they could be involved in the process of what that mural ought to be, who the artist ought to be, what it's going to look like, and that there may be people out in the community who want notice prior to the deciding of the design so that they can say, oh, hey, I want to, whatever.
But just, to me, this sign doesn't say this is where it's going to happen either. It says, for all intents and purposes, this could mean there's going to be a wall built that's 15 feet high that becomes the mural. So it doesn't provide any of the information that would be appropriate to have that. And if you're going to advertise a public process, it seems like it'd be through a Parks and Rec Commission. It would be soliciting designs, and it would probably post a whole bunch of options, and people could just participate in many different ways. I don't think a sign on a wall is generating participation or public notice. I think this could create more confusion than support in the long run, if that's really the goal.
No, I would agree with that, but I would also say that I would, if we were giving direction or something, direct the Parks and Rec Department to possibly come up with something that they would want there prior to approving a design, because I do think that people might want to hear about it before it's a done deal. So
That's not the direction they took. They took the direction of directing him to get a design, get more information about it.
Well, they directed him to notify the public, but they didn't tell him that the only way to do it is to post a banner sign. They kind of left it open-ended for him, and this is the path he chose to take.
and it sounds like they also weren't hugely clear about what comes first. You do step A, B, and C. It was like, here's the 3 things that have to happen. It wasn't this first, maybe it was, I don't know, but that sounds like it's...
And also, I think I should add to what I just said. I think that because Chris Lang was championing this and really wanted to move in this direction, that they felt that they'd pass it up to you as the design review board to entertain this different approach.
I guess I'm in agreement with Brandon in terms of design of the sign. I don't think it elicits what it is we're trying to get. If this process started 2.5 years ago and we're hanging a sign for 2.5 years like this, we're putting the cart before the horse. We need to get the designs, get the funding, come up with it, and then let people know, is it going to take place in 30 days, 60 days, a year, engage, go meet with Parks and Rec, get your input for the design, and then a mural will get painted. So it just seems that it's so vague that we don't know what the timeline's going to be, that the money's actually there, and if this is just going to hang and 3 years from now nothing's there, I think we've wasted everybody's time.
Can I just speak to that for a second? And even though the sign says future site, it's not a future site until the design has been approved. One other little minor point about putting this out there, we're being televised now from now on, and Mr. Lang also showed up, I believe, at council on this issue. And when a design, let's hope, does come in and the Parks and Recreation Commission actually approves it, let's assume they approve a design, that's a public process. It can go up right from there, or it can actually be pushed back up to the design review also.
Go ahead.
Who's responsible if this sign goes up and somebody slips and falls? The mountain bike mosaic had a 1-year insurance certificate of insurance for anything that could have happened there. That was part of the Chamber of Commerce's policy. Since there doesn't seem to be an entity that's responsible, or at this point I assume there's no insurance, I think that's an important thing to get together. Even though this process may have taken a long time, it seems to me that it should be fully packaged rather than a little here and a little there. But insurance is definitely something that should happen, because, you know, if Maria Baird's phone number is on that mural and somebody slips and falls, the town gets sued.
Any other comments?
I have a comment. It seems as though there's a couple of parallel tracks that this application needs to address. One of them is the banner itself, but one of them is kind of the refinement of process, and in continuing it, we're looking at refining process and policy and trying to come up with a clearer way to move forward. I feel like we could direct Chris to solicit designs. I agree with Shelley. I think this approving a site is different than approving a design, and I think it's okay to advertise the site as a future site of something, but we're looking for designs. I think it's a little frustrating to say we've already approved design and it's going to go up here in 30 days. I think it's important to engage the public earlier than that, and I think it's, you know, I don't really I don't think that choosing a design is criteria for well, it's not necessarily the next step. I think getting people to apply for it or submit designs is an important part of that process. So I think there are, again, as I said to Chris, there are lots of ways to solicit that information, solicit those applications or those sketches or whatever it is that we want to see. At the same time, we're refining the policy for the approval of, you know, these public art pieces on town property. So how do we kind of balance that here tonight, you know, to say to Chris, well, you know, we're not saying no, we just want you to do it in a more formalized way, and at the same time we want to go off and make the policy more clear. Does that make sense at all?
You could direct Chris to go back and work with Park and Rec to update their policies. I mean,
I mean, the way you were describing it, it sounds to me like that's the role of the Park and Rec Commission, is to select the art. It's not our role to select the art. It's our role to approve whether, not what it's selected, but where and how it goes and whether it conforms with the town codes. Right. So the town codes aren't reviewing the art. They're reviewing placement, the size, the scale, whatever. And so it's the Parks and Rec Commission that it seems to me that it's their process. That's the reason that they're there, is to have that process and play that role.
Although we are design review, so we also do play a role in reviewing the look and feel and aesthetics and that kind of thing.
But not the art itself.
Actually, it's my understanding that the Parks and Recreation Commission can approve the design, and after that, it can go up independent of you.
Right.
Thank you for that clarification.
Because it's art, not design. I
Yeah,
mean,
the
there's a
policy just
difference.
gave them the option of referring it to you if they wanted you to see it. If you read that policy that I passed out.
So it
So
may.
we could direct, we could say, or I won't, I would say, I agree with the idea of having some sort of public information at the site prior to the artwork being approved by Parks and Rec. This doesn't work for me because the phone number doesn't work for me, and I don't feel like having a design discussion about this banner until it's been approved, until the Park and Rec Department feel like they've got a design that they can come forward and support because it's their project. But I would want to not just direct the applicant to go work with Parks and Rec, but I would also direct Parks and Rec to work with the applicant to come up with an appropriate public notification prior to a design. Does that make sense?
But the town has a public notification process. That's what this first page of the planning packet is. Everyone within 300 feet is notified. And that's no different than if somebody wants to do something on their house, that's the public notification process. So the town has, so
I get that,
That
but it's
is the
a notification
process.
like if it's a regular project, you're notified after all of the architectural drawings are done, and then you notify that an application has been submitted. What he's asking for is a different kind of notification. You're right, he's asking for
But
notification
that's what the
of,
Parks and Rec Commission meeting is. And I guess the question is, does the Parks and Rec Commission meeting do something like this if there's a piece of art? So,
No.
And that might be
No,
something.
and I think you're zeroing in on some interesting issues. And what you might want to consider doing is requesting Parks and Rec, after they approve a design, to bring it back up to you, because we would do the noticing, and that would, it doesn't accomplish what you're talking about, a temporary sign on the site, but I'm just talking about the public process that Brandon was asking about.
But what I think I hear several of you saying is that you're willing to entertain a banner, but the banner doesn't include the information that you think Chris is trying to get out. So maybe the best thing to do is to continue it and ask him to come back with some kind of an alternative design while the Park and Rec Commission and the Chamber are working on on refining the policy.
and I would ask, right, and you keep talking about notification after they have a design. I'm talking about notification before they enter into the design development and assessment and vetting process. So that's what I would like to see, is the applicant and Parks and Rec come back here with a way in which they are going to notify the public prior to vetting of a design, but together that they agree on.
And I was just, to be clear on what I was suggesting, is a two-step approval. It gets approved at the Parks and Recreation Commission first, and then they kick it up to you for final approval, and then we do the noticing. It still doesn't address what you're talking about in terms of having something up on the site during that process.
But I'm not even sure necessarily we need a banner on that, but if we used our typical public notice process to let them know Parks and Rec is considering designs on the parkade, and anybody wishing to be involved can go to the next meeting scheduled, and that information be available.
You could recommend Parks and Recreation Commission do that.
So my question for staff is, there's a recommendation for continuance. We've had a lot of discussion, and I think, do you think there needs to be like more guidance, or do you think the minutes and the discussion is enough to?
Well, I think
Help,
you should take a motion and include what your direction is to Park and Rec, and that you're continuing the sign. And if some of you are willing to entertain a banner, then you should give Chris some help in what that banner should contain, so that it does, get across the message he's trying to get across. It's not necessarily a bad idea, it just doesn't accomplish what I think he's trying to accomplish.
And the direction that I would give him is that he and the Parks and Rec need to come to an agreement on the content of the banner, and I would include in your item number 3 on your recommendation, so I would want to say that he and the Parks and Rec need to come to an agreement and come together on the content of the banner, and I would like to direct Parks and Rec that they work with him on a pre-designed public notification process that may or may not include a banner. It doesn't exclude the idea of having a banner, but it's a pre-designed public notification process, which I believe was the intent of his banner. And I don't see any of that in the kind of direction, so I would add that direction to Parks and Rec.
I think you should make
Yeah,
a motion.
because I would say I feel like this is an advertisement, and I don't see how it contributes to the goal of the project. And I think I agree that having a way of saying this is a place where we want to do a public mural, that's completely different than I think what this is. And we're talking about this banner right now as if it's the art. And I think my concern is it's not the art. That we want to make sure there's a process to allow the art that's to be put up in a manner that everybody can enjoy. If we spend all our time on this banner, we're never going to get to the art. And I'd hate the banner to take away from the possibility.
And that's what we've been doing for a long time.
May I have one question. What is the process that's used to get submissions for the Fairfax Festival art? There's usually
I think it's advertised in the Ross Valley, I see it in the Ross Valley Reporter, it might even be in the IJ, giving a deadline for submittals.
So I think that was kind of the path that Shelby was suggesting, that maybe that's something we can direct the applicant to pursue as part of it.
If I might suggest, if you just, perhaps you might think about just taking an up or down vote on this banner, which sounds like you have some consensus on, and then give direction to staff to communicate to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Your thoughts?
I mean, I'm fine with continuing it with the amendments that I've presented, which is to direct Parks and Rec to include a pre-designed public notification process and work with the applicant on that.
I also heard you say that you wanted Park and Rec that if there's going to be a banner, you wanted Park and Rec to work with Chris on what the content of the banner would be, right? Okay.
Others?
And I guess I don't feel that a banner needs to be I think we should direct Parks and Rec to come up with a pre-designed process, to have clear process for public notification, advertising or soliciting proposals for the murals or for the artwork, and that's it. I don't feel like this banner is part of that process. I think it's a completely separate process that needs to be developed, and I don't want the banner to become the thing that is being considered, because that's the way I'm hearing the banner being discussed.
I don't think it's appropriate to get involved in a 300-foot radius notification on a public project. If it's a project that's done on town land, it's for the betterment, in theory, for everybody in the town, and to give exclusive scrutiny of the project to the people that are in the immediate vicinity, I don't think makes any sense for a public project. Makes sense if you're, doing an addition to your house, that kind of thing. The people in the immediate vicinity, I think that makes sense. So getting involved in a notification process like that, I don't think is the way to go. I think the Park and Rec Committee is there, and this is one of their jobs. And I think it works. I also believe that what Chris is basically trying to do is communicate what's going on. And I'm not sure that a banner is really the best form to do that, given, well, like what I said before, it's potentially unsafe. Maybe a sign or some other form of notification would make sense.
So it sounds like there's moving towards consensus on continuing the review process. And so if there's...
I'd like to make a motion to continue the design review application that doesn't have an application number. Oh, because it's incomplete. All right. Okay. Well, I'd like to make a motion to continue the application for the public art banner on the south wall of the parkade, with the amendment that we direct Parks and Rec to create a broader scale pre-design notification process, which may include banners, signs, advertisements, and the normal conduits for public notification within the town website. You know what I mean, right? And following the recommendations of staff in the staff report.
So it's it would be the item 3 with a D is sort of what you're describing as so it's A, B, C, and then D. Okay.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. So that item has been continued with amended direction. We will now move on to item number 4. 270, yes.
Please announce the appeal rights.
Oh, the appeal rights. Oh, a 10-day appeal with a $500 fee. Oh, wait, if it's continued, is there an appeal? No, because we didn't, that's okay. So, no appeal yet. All right, now, item number 4, 271, is there a time, I'm sorry, is there a time limit on that appeal or continuance? I mean, I'm sorry, is there a time limit on the continuance?
We had recommended that it be continued off calendar because
Got it, great.
otherwise it gives them a short time window to try to come
Great.
back with everything.
Great.
So,
All right, so let's move on to item number 4, 271 Tamalpais Road. Could we have staff?
okay, the applicants are proposing to build decks on top of an unpermitted foundation system that will include raised planting beds and lattice screens at the edge of the decks, and the decks will step down the hillside from the house. The project requires the approval of a use permit. The town code requires that properties that do not meet minimum size and width requirements must obtain a use permit prior to any use, occupancy, or improvement. The site has a 39% slope and would have to be 31,000 square feet in size and 137 feet wide to comply with the code. The site's only 19,888 square feet in size and 100 feet wide. Therefore, the project requires a use permit. The proposed decks meet the minimum and combined setback requirements, so they're not requesting any exceptions to the setbacks. The proposed structure will also use permeable decking, so it doesn't increase the lot coverage or of the site, and nor does it count towards the floor area ratio because it's not enclosed living space. Similar step decks and walled terraces exist throughout Fairfax in the hillside areas, and therefore staff is recommending that you approve the project based on the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the staff report.
All right, are there any questions of staff?
I have a question. You recommended in the staff report that it be reviewed by a civil engineer, the grade beams be reviewed by a civil engineer, but shouldn't it be a structural that looks at it? Or the building inspector? Or?
Well, the fear is that they weren't built with the proper depth of rebar and things, so I thought a civil, but if you think it should be a structural, that's fine. I wanted... I think what I was really trying to get is a geotechnical engineer to okay the foundation. So if that sounds better, then I would recommend that you amend that condition to a geotechnical engineer reviewing the adequacy of the existing foundation system.
So
Other questions?
you said it's a permeable deck, so water goes through the slats of the wood. Is that what makes it permeable?
Correct.
So all decks are permeable unless they're cement?
Unless they're covered with, some people cover their decks with AstroTurf and all kinds of stuff, but As long as it's slats, it's considered to be permeable.
Okay, and is there, I get the concern about the stability. Is there a concern that this would lead to additional development down the road, or is there some sort of other restrictions that you feel are necessary to,
No,
suddenly
it's
there's
just
a
that people
shed
will
on it?
people
or-
will be walking on the decks, and they will have large planters filled with dirt, and the foundation was built without any kind of permits or inspections. So it's mostly for the stability to make sure it can support the deck and the amount of weight they're putting on it.
With the planters?
I mean, it could just be concrete on grade, we don't really know.
Any other questions, or should we? Okay, can we have the applicant come up? If they're here?
My name is Jeff Mahaney. I'm actually here on behalf of the applicants. They're out of the country. I live at 54 Wood Lane.
Did they instruct you to tell us anything about the application?
I can give you the information that I know, sure. Yeah, sure, absolutely. So the intention obviously for the planter beds is this existing foundation system that was part of the old house that was located in a very precarious location is pretty much a big eyesore on the property. Because it is a hillside, there's limited flat area to use to have a garden and to have vegetables. And so the applicants are using the existing structure as the foundation system, if you will, to be able to build these planters. They've minimized the height as far as using the existing concrete to tie into to build the planters up, and having the soil and planter beds be at as low as possible. I think in respect with the neighbors and with some back and forth between neighbors, they came up with the concept of adding the trellis along the one side. And that was for any sort of noise and or potential visual impact if you're standing at the planter beds looking across the property. The planter beds, I don't think, are really a visual impact necessarily to the neighbors, but once again, the trellis was sort of a little extra added effort to keep things friendly between neighbors. And the height of that, I believe, is a couple of feet below the required, or the maximum height that they could go to. And I believe that the design was originally looked at, and there was some question about where the setback line was. Part of the structures were maybe 5 inches into the setback, so the applicants are going to be pulling that back, verifying exactly where the 5-foot setback is, and bringing the planter beds to that location. And then as far as the walkway in front of the planter beds, it's really been designed simply as a space to walk in front of vegetables, do what you have to do, and get out of there. It's not a deck, it's not a terrace, it's not a place to hang out and enjoy yourself. So it's really just functionality for harvesting vegetables. I think that's all I need to say.
Thanks. Are there any questions?
I have a question. It's referred to as a trellis. I guess it's like a lattice. It's in effect, it's like a fence.
Right.
So is there a fence between the two properties currently?
There is a fence between
And
them.
how high is it? Is it like a standard 6-foot
I think I believe it's a standard fence, yeah.
So I don't know, I'm kind of struggling a little bit why the need for this extra barrier between when there's already a fence, and I see this as a fence, but it's much taller than the fence would be. So I'm
Sure. I think that that vertical element was once again added as a gesture towards the neighbors and some of their concerns. And so the way I understand the lattice and the way that it'll be used is the idea is to be able to plant against it, either on the one side for privacy and or the planter bed side for, growing a grape on the side of it, or some other vegetable that might climb, if you will, onto the side of the lattice. The applicants did not originally have that as part of the design. It was not part of it.
And I don't see how high the planter boxes are intended to be. Do you know how tall?
I don't
those
have the
are?
drawing in front of me, but my understanding is the box is a little bit higher than the 2 feet of soil that's within the box.
Okay.
And then in addition, there's some space between the bottom of the box and grade below,
Okay.
because the structure, of course, sits
Right.
within the concrete
Okay.
foundation system.
Any other questions, or should we open it up? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll now open it up to public for public comment. If there's anyone here, come up to the podium, state your name and address, and tell us what you have to say in 3 minutes.
My name is Charles Richardson, 267 Tamalpais. I'm the neighbor we're referring to with the comments, and it was kind of an unpleasant thing as it started evolving, and it was close to the property line and whatnot, but I appreciate the gesture they've made as far as trying to screen it, and as we reviewed it, it seems like it is within the restrictions that have to be met. And our big concern was originally it was going right to the fence, not doing the 5-foot setback, and they have agreed to remove the parts that are in it and respect that, and we very much appreciate that. So we didn't really have any objections to this. I mean, it's, you know, we all resist something that's going to be different. 12 feet, you know, high, it's not going to be like it's not there. But I wrote the letter, I'm sure you all have it in the packet, and I certainly want to be able to do with my property what I want to do, and so I in turn feel that we have to do the same. You know, I've done things that impact other people, and thank goodness, you know, everything works out. And I think we had some disagreements, but I was hoping they were going to be here, so that we haven't actually talked about it. You know, we talked on the phone a little bit, but at any rate, the big concern we have is respecting that 5 foot. And what I would request is they had a lot of work done. They had a slide on the other side of their house, and so the property has been surveyed recently, and I would ask that one of the conditions be that the surveyor come back and mark exactly where that property line is, so we don't just kind of guess at it. And that way, when the inspections are done, it would be easy enough for the building officials to verify that that is in fact the situation. So, because the amount it comes into that 5 foot is, you know, I think without that we couldn't really verify that that's what it is. And we are here because there was, when the house was rebuilt, there was another one there, and the house was rebuilt and it's kind of turned and pointed towards us, so we're really impacted by the noise, which we never expected. But we learned from that, if you don't get up here and say something, then hey, live with it, you know. So that's why we're here. We just want to make sure that you know, we're protected as much as we can, and that's, I think, our big concern. And you know, I hope we get it all worked out, and that seems to be the biggest thing that you know, the best thing would be it wasn't there, but that's not going to be the situation. So
Okay, thank you. You come up and state your name, and you can have...
Sherry Richardson, and I had not intended to talk, but you gave me a pang of concern when we talked about the unsupported concrete and the potential, you know, for the weight-bearing problem, which if there was a slide there, it would be a slide directly on our property as well, potentially. Just, I hadn't even considered that until I heard that dialogue between everyone. So just a little air of concern right there.
Okay, thank you.
I
All
think
right.
that was one of our points that we made in the letter too, was to,
Right.
make sure that this, because we're
Okay.
downhill from that particular section, so we'd like it to stay uphill. from
Okay,
us.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public before we bring it back? Okay, let's bring it back to the commission for conversation and action.
So, I just wanted to confirm, this was kind of described as part of the foundation of a previous structure, and that's,
When I looked through the file, I was not able to verify that that was, the house on the old plans is shown
Somewhere
uphill
else.
from these three foundations, so I wasn't able to verify that.
And are they tied into the, it looks like by the picture, they're kind of tied into the existing structure?
Not sure.
Or tied in,
That-
or
that's
just
why we want-
adjacent to?
That's why we want someone to
Got
take a
it.
look at it, because I believe it was done after the old house was removed. I don't think it was
Okay.
part of the house foundation, maybe.
And is it, I mean, typically we do require, the town doesn't require boundary surveys, but it is we could require the boundary survey. Right now it's written more as a
Yeah,
conditional
we actually, our
thing, but-
condition number 1 says that the building official shall verify the location of the side property line and the 5-foot setback, and may require that the location be verified by a surveyor. And I think it's fine to just change that
Just
to that
make
he
it a-
shall.
Yeah, and just get rid of the may require and just say be verified by a surveyor prior.
I believe the neighbor mentioned that there had been a survey done recently, and they just
Adjacent.
wanted that same surveyor to verify the line.
Yeah, they might not
And-
have,
and
they might
prop-
not have done that side though. Sometimes they only do one side.
Well, it was basically, they built a new garage and then they attached a new house to it, and I'm pretty sure that we required them to have a survey at that
Okay.
time. But
All right.
But there's a difference between doing a survey and marking the property line, which requires a little bit of work of them going back out and
Yeah.
making the line
So
clear. and
you should read condition 1, and if it needs to be modified, feel free to do so.
I don't think that we should say that a survey is required. It may be required. I mean, it would cost the homeowner, $1,500, $2,500 unnecessarily, possibly. Also, I don't know that it's necessary to have a geotechnical engineer look at it. If we get a letter from a civil engineer saying it's okay, that's enough. But he or she will probably consult with a geotech, a couple $1,000s.
If this were a new build deck, if they were just doing a deck and, say, sinking piers or something like that, I'm assuming it would still need a permit because of the slope issue. But what kind of engineering would you also
We'd
require?
get it, if it was coming to the planning commission before it had been constructed, we would have a geotechnical report.
And for the actual construction, that would be handled at the building permit stage.
But considering the fact that it's already existing, you can have a geotech go out and review the foundations, or even, I mean, I'm inclined to say a geotech and a structural, to go out and review the structures, review the soil conditions. If there's a historic slide on the property already, I think it's in everyone's best interest to have them just do a review of what's existing. It doesn't cost that much to do that, and then have that geotech write a letter of their findings, rather than doing an actual geotechnical report, which requires the borings and the full calculations and everything. So there's
Yeah, our
few-
condition said a letter shall be submitted, so we're just looking for some engineer to tell us that it's going to stay on the hill where it's been built.
So are we requiring a geotech? Because, you know, an engineer may just go there and say, this is, you know, there used to be a house there, this is just planters. This is has as much impact as a flea on a dog's back. You know, it really won't be much, because it's just this dead weight of planters that are only so high.
Well, it's up to the commission how they want to word that condition. We had originally, after speaking with the building official, asked for a letter from a licensed civil engineer. The more I think about it, I think there should be a letter from a geotechnical engineer as well. Because I don't believe that foundation was part of the old house. I think it was built without any kind of inspections or permits. I don't find any record of it.
Are you asking as well or instead of?
I think there should be both, but the final decision is yours. My conditions are just recommendations.
And your rationale for both rather than one or the other is?
Well, the structural will look at what's above ground, but won't necessarily investigate, you know, how far down solid rock is and what the soil type is. So, yeah.
Any other commissioner comments on this before we try and take an action?
So,
Actually, we just have discussion now. We close, because we closed the public comment period. So let us finish.
Something about the structure, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So I would become, I actually sometimes surveys, it sounds like a property survey, boundary survey for this property is reasonable to ask for, given the concerns that have been raised. If it's already been surveyed, it's verifying the corners. But a lot of times the survey might just do one side because that's where the concern is and they didn't do the other side. So I think I would prefer to require that side boundary to be documented by a surveyor so the setback can be verified by the building official. And in terms of the engineers, I don't have enough background, but I mean, if the building official is comfortable with it, I would think the town engineer would maybe have a recommendation. I'd be fine with,
He doesn't typically review projects of this size and type.
Right.
It goes to our outside plan checkers, Coastland Engineering.
Okay. So I hate to have two different engineers look at it, but they're very different things. I mean, the civil is kind of dealing with general issues as opposed to geotech, which is very specific. But I think it's probably in the best interest of the town to have both reviewed, being that if there's no record of those foundations, I feel like this might be the only way to get a record to feel comfortable about it. So
I agree with the issue of the geotech because of the nature of the slide. The civil and the above ground stuff, given that it's just a deck, I'm not as concerned about the engineering of the deck. I am concerned about the engineering of the soils and the connecting of the deck into the ground so the deck doesn't go anywhere. I don't think that they need to have an engineer for a deck. So I would do an instead of with a geotech rather than a both as a compromise.
I mean, there are people out there who are both geotechs and civils in one person, so I would look for that guy.
Can I just take a step? We have a very learned building official. Mark he ran a construction company of his own for 20 years, so I would back up his recommendation. You know, if you want to add to it, go right ahead.
So you're saying don't do a geotech instead of a civil?
I just think that the size of the project and the situation and the height of the addition, I think that learned professionals like Mark Lockerbie have a pretty clear read on the situation that probably either could probably get a pretty quick handle on what's necessary to verify. But that would just be my non-engineering opinion. It's true, and Linda is saying there has been a slide on the site, so it's up to you all.
It's not a habitable structure, so I don't think we need to go to the level that we would if it was a habit. So I think the applicant can find an engineer, and then the building department ultimately has to sign off on it, and if he needs more information at that point, then the applicant would need to provide that additional information to the satisfaction of the building official.
I guess one suggestion is for point D, if we wanted to change it to be a licensed civil or geotechnical engineer, if anybody felt strongly to have slash, kind of the and or.
That sounds like some consensus. Does anybody want to make a motion? The two, go ahead.
I would make a motion to approve application 1313 with amendments to recommended condition 1 to say the building official shall verify the location of the side property line and the 5-foot side setback based upon a verified survey prior to the start of construction.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
And that recommended condition 4D be amended to say that a letter shall be submitted by a licensed civil / geotechnical engineer. So it's adding a slash instead of an and or an or. And the rest of it would stay the same.
All right, we have a motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So application 1313 is approved. There is a 10-day appeal period with a $500 fee. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to, okay. So we have one of our commissioners recused for item number 5. And we will move forward with item number 5, 1599 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, application 1316. Can we have the staff report?
Sure. Okay, the applicants are proposing to remodel and convert the building into 3,600 square feet of area to be used by the daily method while retaining the remaining 2,017 square feet for retail use. The daily method is a 1-hour fitness program that combines Pilates, yoga, ballet, and orthopedic exercises. The proposal requires the approval of the following discretionary permits. It requires a use permit. The property was rezoned Central Commercial CC Zone with the adoption of the 2010 to 2030 Fairfax General Plan. Physical fitness businesses are not included in the list of permitted uses in the CC Zone. It also requires a use permit because it's a formula business. The Daily Method is a franchise with similar 1-hour fitness locations across the country. In order to operate a franchise business in the CC zone, the commission has to be able to answer a list of questions, but the basic premise is that the question is, will the business provide services and products which will satisfy the day-to-day needs of residents of the Upper Ross Valley, San Geronimo Valley, and central Western areas, and will they not detract from existing similar businesses that are already in town? Project also requires a traffic impact permit. The new use will generate 100 average daily trips or more beyond that generated by the prior 2 uses. It was the Salami Factory, which was a number of artist studios and generated very low foot traffic, and then it was also the tack and feed store. So the applicant's traffic engineer has submitted a traffic study which indicates that although the use will generate 339 new trips per day, this amount of increased traffic will not result in any significant impacts on the major intersections that were identified for study by the town council when they adopted the traffic study methodology. In fact, the increased traffic will only result in delays of 0.0 to 0.3 seconds, resulting in changes that will be imperceptible to motorists at the Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, Kent Avenue intersection, the Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, Pastore Avenue intersection, and the Sir Francis Drake Boulevard and Pacheco intersections. Therefore, staff feels that the findings that are required by the town code to approve the traffic impact permit can be made as follows. The project's average daily traffic, when added to the existing daily traffic plus projected traffic, will not cause the performance levels of intersections of roadway linkages to fall below the acceptable levels of service. Included in the traffic study, the applicants provided a turning radius analysis which showed that vehicles can exit the site and drive forward onto Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, so they're not going to impact the through traffic along Sir Francis Drake. The project also requires a parking variance. We have a pretty outdated parking ordinance, and the parking requirements are pretty excessive by today's standards. So the town code requires that uses in the CC zone have one parking space for each 200 square feet of gross floor area. So in order to comply with that section of the code, this 5,617 square foot building would require 28 parking spaces. The classes held by the daily method are dispersed throughout the day, and people attending the classes will not exceed 13, and they will have a maximum of 3 staff members on site at any one time. And let's see, the applicants have indicated that they also expect to draw a lot of their clientele from nearby areas, and some of their clients will walk or bike to the site and carpool. The retail use is estimated to generate 22 trips per day. So staff is of the opinion that the 11 on-site spaces, which far exceed what most of our commercial buildings provide in town, is adequate. The project also requires design review. They will remove some of the exterior doorways and paint the building and put in all new windows, and we feel that those proposed changes comply with the design review criteria in the town code. And therefore, we're recommending that you approve Resolution 13.5, approving a traffic impact permit, parking variance, use permit for a formula business, use permit for the daily method and retail space, and design review for the project, and recommending that the town council also approve the traffic impact permit based on the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the resolution. That would conclude our report.
Are there any questions of staff? I only have one. You didn't mention the easement. Is that because it's a negligible
Well, we
impact?
actually, I passed out and emailed you earlier, but you might have missed it. We met with the applicant, and the easement is really a civil matter between the 2 property owners. It's been used between 3 property owners, and they've all been using the parking lot for years without any kind of formalized easement. And it was the applicant's fear, which staff agreed with, that making that a condition of approval could delay their opening. And so, since it is a civil matter, we removed that condition from our resolution.
Any other questions?
The existing trees along the building are going to be removed?
Correct.
Was there a reason, and what kind of tree?
You'll have to ask the applicant that.
Okay. Do we know what kind of trees there?
I don't. Shelby, do you know? Or they looked almost like cypress or junipers. They're junipers. The planning director thinks they're junipers.
That'll be to us too.
And they look okay. And to staff, I'm not an expert on that, but they looked like they were outgrowing their locations anyway.
They will have to go to the tree committee to remove those.
Okay, if there's no other questions, then we can go ahead and ask the applicant to come up and talk about your project with us.
Hello. My name is Doug McIntosh, and this is my wife, Jill Daly McIntosh. We are the co-founders of the Daily Method, and we live at 15 Valley Road in San Anselmo, 1 block over from Willow, and about 10 houses from the proposed location. We've lived there since 2004. That's who we are.
Great. Anything else you wanted to tell us, or should we just go to questions?
Just to answer the one question that came up about the trees, actually it was a recommendation by the fire chief to remove those because that type of tree is a safety hazard. They tend to burn pretty quickly.
Great, thanks for that. All right, are there any other questions of the applicant?
Well, I just had one quick one. It sounds, so we have to consider this as a formula business, but there's only one other location, or there?
Well,
many,
so
many locations?
this actual location will not be a franchise. It'll be owned and operated by us. We happen to own the franchise business because we created the business. But because it's part of a formula, we have to go through that process.
Sorry.
So right now, you envision 6 classes, max of 13 participants at your 8:45. It's conceivable that all classes could go up to 13 if the demand was there?
That's actually, that was an average based on our Corte Madera location.
Okay.
We think it'll probably be smaller here because if you look at the density between Corte Madera and this area, we also we do have a greater capacity than 13, but the average that store is that.
Okay.
Yeah, and also just note that our busiest time will be from 9 in the morning till noon, and we think it's a great fit for the community. It's proven that way in Corte Madera. A lot of people will drop off their kids and come. We're not as busy early in the morning. We're not as busy in the afternoons or evenings. Our busiest time is right after everybody drops everybody off at school, and that's when we'll have the most traffic there, which, having lived there and being there, it's dead. There's plenty of parking. There's no traffic.
I have a question for staff about formula businesses. Given that it's part of the use permit, if a formula business, but that's like this, if they owned the site but then, say, sold the franchise to someone else, would that, I mean, is there language in here that kind of says that their use permit is only for them owning it?
No, use permits run with the land. So, you know, if someone came in with a different formula business, they would have to go through this process. But if someone was operating the same type of business, they wouldn't have to come back.
Do you know when the formula business section of the town code was enacted?
I can probably find out. Hang on.
Are there any other questions of the applicant while we're looking for the answer to that question? Okay, you can go ahead and sit down. Thank you very much. And now we will open it up to the audience.
You want your answer?
Oh, there we go, answer. And then we'll open it up to the audience.
April 1st, 2000 is when that section was added to the, and it's only in the central commercial zone district. So the council didn't see fit to put it in the other commercial districts. It was just in the central commercial.
Morgan, that was April 1st, 2000.
April 1st? April Fool's Day.
Okay, now we'll open it up to the audience. So if anybody would like to come up and speak to this application, state your name and address in 3 minutes.
My name is Wayne Vanderwalker. I reside at 15871 Sir Francis Drake. I share the driveway that this business will be using. My concern isn't with the business, isn't with the retail going in there, it's with the safety issues that I don't think that the traffic study as written in what was published on the website seem not to address. It doesn't seem to address the site issue, or there's a speed bump as you enter that driveway that slows down traffic. The bus stop is fairly new there. That was put in there maybe 6-8 months ago now. And the bus shelter creates a sightline problem as you pull out of that driveway. Also, I have concerns about people trying to make left turns out of that driveway during the busy times of the day. It is nearly impossible, which would put more traffic if you want to circle around either on streets in San Anselmo on Suffield, or coming around on Oak Knoll, or possibly down on San Anselmo Avenue, depending upon how you want to do that. Also, I don't see an area, I know the McIntoshes have said that people may walk or ride their bikes, but I don't see anything addressed about where bike parking would be and how that may impact the parking lot.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Dave Smadbeck. I'm the co-president of the Chamber of Commerce, Fairfax Chamber of Commerce, and I just wanted to come to address this commission. The Fairfax Chamber of Commerce has fully endorses this project, and we really applaud the McIntoshes in their efforts to be thorough in their application process and doing the traffic study. And we just wanted to be a voice of support and hope that you approve their permit. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Barb Harris. I live at 2 Hunter Creek in Fairfax, and I just want to say I've been going to the Daily Method for about 8 years. Unfortunately, I don't look like the instructors, but I do enjoy it, and I would really look forward to seeing another location closer, and it would afford me an opportunity to ride my bike. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Scott Huckstrasser. I live at 42 Glen Drive in Fairfax. I'm also a land use planning consultant. I've been advising this applicant, and I wanted to answer the question that was raised by one of the neighbors relative to site distance. I want to call your attention to the June 11th, 2013 report, the traffic report, and ask you to look at page 5, wherein there was a very specific analysis of the site distance for this driveway. And I can answer a couple of the other questions. The speed bump is planned to be removed, and there is bike parking planned as part of a whole incentive for accessing this site. The bike parking would be inside the building. Lastly, I'd like to say that we've been working with the staff. We're pleased that we have a set of conditions and a resolution that are consistent with our thinking, and we can live with the conditions that are proposed. And thank you, staff, for working closely with us. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liz Capron. I live in San Anselmo, and I've been doing the Daily Method for maybe 5 years. And I hate to get in my car, and I've been going all the way to Corte Madera. I mean, I rarely get past the hub for anything but the Daily Method, so I've been bugging these guys for years to move one into Fairfax, and I, for one, would be riding my bike or walking there. It's close to my house, and I know a lot, I have a lot of friends who would be doing the same. It would really answer a local need. Thanks. Yeah, Liz Capron. Thank you. Sure.
Hi, my name is Genevieve Brohl, and I live at 24 Shadow Creek Court in Fairfax. And yeah, as it is right now, the Daily Method is about 30 minutes from my house, and I spend a lot of my time in my car driving back and forth to exercise every week. And it would be amazing to have this fitness class close by where I could ride my bike or run to class. And I know there's a lot of community support for this. Could everyone who's here to support the Daily Method just stand up for a moment? Yeah, so there's a lot of support for this. It fills a need that's not here in Fairfax. None of the other fitness places here in Fairfax are anything like what the Daily Method is. So, thanks.
All right. Is anyone else? Appreciate your group method there. Okay, I'm going to bring it back up to the commission for a conversation and action. Start.
I have a couple questions and concerns, although if my abs could be as good as some of you, I might be sold. A little bit of the traffic. I think I'm a planner and looking at the trips generated. 8:30 drop off at Brookside, and the elementary school is nearby. Most of the traffic is heading eastbound, so turning right from Sir Francis Drake into the parking lot wouldn't be a problem, but I'm envisioning people coming from San Anselmo and turning against that. If we've got 10 or so cars turning left plus the other businesses there, You know, we're still at the level of service that we feel okay. I do see the concern. One of our public commented on pulling out. Now we have 10 people pulling out after class and turning left onto Sir Francis, or turning, yeah, left onto Sir Francis Drake. How problematic that might be in clogging it. So that's just one of the concerns I was thinking about.
I have a question about traffic in that area as well in general. I know that there was some conversation about traffic when Good Earth was moving in there. They lengthened that turning thing, and maybe some of the lighting was, the lights were timed differently. And
no, they weren't.
They weren't timed different. Okay.
They haven't been timed.
Okay, so this is my question, because I've noticed that area gets really clogged up, and then it goes, goes fine, gets clogged, goes fine. And I was wondering if there's any continued plan for some other traffic. Is the light plan to be changed, or what's the what's the general thing?
There was originally no right turn off of Pastoria onto Sir Francis Drake during the red light, and then there was a removal of the lower branches of the trees next to the Good Earth that improved the eyesight, and a decision was made in the traffic committee sometime around the time of the entitlements, not after the project had been completed, to move forward with letting that relax and allow right turns on red because of the line of sight improving. You're correct that coming west on Sir Francis Drake, the left turn pocket off of Sir Francis Drake onto Pastori was extended, and that's what actually precipitated moving the bus stop from in front of the restaurant down to this location.
What about the timing of those lights? That hasn't changed. Is there any plan to evaluate that?
Well, we will be watching, and we have some other issues on our radar with circulation issues, but at this time, there's no plans that I know of.
But I have to say I drive that very often, and in the morning or in the afternoon, it's not, I think it is this light that is off. It's not timed with the Pastori light, and you'll empty Pastori and everybody's stopped all the way back to the high school, and it doesn't flow at all, and then it's a weird offset, and it doesn't actually help with allowing people to make left-hand turns. I mean, because you're basically filling up this little half block, and that's it. And it goes the other way in the morning as well, because you'll get a few cars through the Pastori intersection, and then they have to stop again, and so everybody's backed up all the way through town.
But the signal timing's hard because you're feeding San Anselmo and Fairfax, and then the feeder streets come in, so it's hard to get that signal timing all along.
The problem there, and I think it's outlined in the general plan and the circulation element in recommendations, the line between Fairfax and San Anselmo runs down the middle of that section of road. And so one light is considered San Anselmo and one light is considered Fairfax, and we got to talk. Because, and that's one of the recommendations in the general plan. I don't know how, if your guy can call my guy kind of thing, or if it's, let's have
your
building officials get together.
Your points are well taken, and you're going a little beyond the scope of the analysis because it was looking at existing conditions and how this project would fit into it. So your points are well taken. I thank you for remembering our circulation element, and it is two jurisdictions. So staff will take your comments under consideration in terms of the timing of the two lights. But again, what's before you tonight is the learned professionals, both in the traffic study itself done by W-Trans and the peer review that was done by David Parisi, who we rely on quite often for our peer review.
Can I ask one other question to staff? Are we considering metered parking at all along Sir Francis Drake in our future circulation?
Not at this point in time. That the whole idea of managed parking will be coming when we visit the exercise of creating a town center plan, which that area is part of it. And we also are going to be doing forward thinking on aggregating parking for the town area, decoupling it from individual sites like this. There's several commercial properties in town which are substandard by our requirement for parking, and they get bottlenecked with trying to get other uses in there because they can't provide the parking. So our intention is to revisit the parking requirements by decoupling parking from individual sites and doing a managed parking approach, but there's a lot of work to be done to get there.
So with all that big picture stuff discussed, I would like to commend the applicant and their professionals on getting this far. I know that there are a lot of hoops that you jump through. I have a little bit of experience with traffic analysis, so I understand the distance you have come to get to this point, and I appreciate that it's so clear and so well done, so I don't want you to get tangled up in our own little personal politics here. So I think this is a great project. I think it's a great method, and I also have a lot of friends who go to the Corte Madera place that would stay in town if they could. So I am in support of this project as it is.
I was just going to say I actually have a lot of friends who don't go to Corte Madera who would like one here, but they don't go because it's too far and they can't get there and back. So I think there is a lot of latent demand here for this kind of service.
So two things. One, the reason I point out the traffic lights is because any concerns about traffic, I think, are still haven't been addressed. And so this isn't showing that there's a traffic concern, but if there were, I still would say it's the timing of the lights that I think is a bigger issue. In terms of the formula, whatever the rule is called, formula of business, I think it's important that what I heard is that really what we're approving is a formula business for exercise, and that if the daily method left, but it was another formula business, but it was an exercise business, that would be okay. But anything else like fast food, retail, that would have to require a different permit. So in terms of finding the formula business, I think that was one of the drivers. We don't want people to exercise, we want to have unique and different, and I think this is creating an opportunity for a different kind of access, or access to a different kind of exercise program, and I don't have a concern about that not fitting in with the town of Fairfax. And I think I'm glad that staff was able to make those findings and articulate those, because I know it would have taken us lots of time to come up with all of those questions being answered so quickly.
Linda, back when the formula business ordinance was enacted, was there a particular incident or that caused that to be enacted? Was there, did Target try to open up a store here in Fairfax or anything like that?
If I'm remembering, there were rumors and a couple of meetings, I think with one of the big drugstore chains, I think it was Payless, which seemed odd to me because the store in San Anselmo was Payless at the time, but I think that's what provoked the adoption of the ordinance. I believe it was a Payless.
Yeah, I'm fairly concerned about this whole formula business. I know it's slightly different here in that it's going to be called the daily method, but it's not going to be a franchise because the corporation that franchises, I assume, are the couple that talked to us earlier. But I'd like to be sure that if we approve this, we're not establishing some kind of a precedent that we could come to regret. So I didn't know if there's any way that we can couch this whole thing without opening the floodgates of...
The resolution specifically names the daily method and the type of exercise program. And the code doesn't say you can't have formula businesses. It just says that you have to be able to answer affirmatively to the questions that are contained in the ordinance. So it has to be a benefit to the community. It has to not detract or take business away from other similar types of businesses, and that it would be beneficial and serve a need for the Ross Valley. This is a really different type of exercise program. There are other gyms are pretty much typical gyms with weightlifting and bikes. This is not the same type of business, so they're not going to detract from the other gyms in town. And I don't think you're open, if you're worried about opening up McDonald's coming into town, they would have to go through this same process, and you would have to be able to make findings for all those questions, and they're pretty extensive questions contained in the code.
I think part of what he might be getting at, though, is because it's if there were a new kind of exercise business to move into this space, would they still be required to meet all of these conditions because they were a new business, or would they by right simply because they're the same type of business? For example, if a Gold's Gym, if they went out of business and a Gold's Gym wanted to move in there, it's the same type of business, but I would say a Gold's Gym would not meet all of these, would not be able to answer all of these questions affirmatively.
Yeah, I see what your concern is.
So I want to
take-
make sure that just because it's the same type of business, they don't have a by right access to move into that space.
You can probably address that. I would look through the resolution, and you can probably include language in the resolution, which is the document approving the use permit and the discretionary permits.
I'm perfectly comfortable with this particular business being in here. I have no problem with how these questions have been answered. I just want to make sure that we're not opening it up to any old kind of gym.
I don't think you are. I mean, the whereas specifically addressed the traffic study that was done for this business. It names the daily method that provides only a 1 hour long workout. So I think if something, it specifies the business hours. If you look at page 8, which is resolution 13-5.
So, I mean, I think we've got a, odd situation in that it's a formula business, but it's the owners of the business who are Ross Valley residents and who are owning it. But if they decide to sell the daily method to John Smith, who's going to operate the daily method and still remain intact, that use permit's going to run with the land.
But I think if they were coming
There's
to
other
us
concerns.
saying, this isn't a formula business, this is our own, this is the only one, then we wouldn't have gone through this process. So I think this process is actually covering an assumption that it is a formula business. Now, I don't know if we'd be having this discussion. I think we'd be debating the opposite if it hadn't come this way. I feel comfortable.
I think if you read the whereases in the resolution, it protects you against someone trying to come in that's too different from this type of use. It's pretty specific about how the business operates.
And it's only at this location, so it doesn't mean, okay,
Right.
we've got it in one, we can go have a second location in Fairfax. It's specific to this spot.
Correct, to this address. Cites the address in the title, and
The number and time of the visitors.
So we can't grant a use permit for these owners only?
You're granting a use permit for this business.
you could grant it for, but I don't know why you would want to do that, because if somebody else came in and wanted to operate the same business.
Is there anything in the resolution that says that the business will, that it meets all of the requirements or shall perpetually meet all of the requirements as identified?
It's implied.
In other words,
It's implied in the approval of the use permit, but I think you can insert any language that, if you're in favor of the business, you can insert any language that makes you feel more comfortable that you're not.
I think the concern I'm hearing is not about this. It's that any other formula business that comes into this location, whether it's exercise or not, would come back to the commission for review. And so I think that's it's how do we get it? But I also have concerns about making it so specific that it's not just
Use permits can typically be reviewed, so I guess you could put a condition in that just says, if the business changes hands, the use permit shall come back to the planning commission for a review.
I think that might be the way to.
that would probably be good, because, for example, item number 2 says that it is likely that significant revenues from this business will be derived from residents of the Upper Ross Valley, San Geronimo, and Central West Marin. So you could still have the this business franchised, operating exactly like it's operating, but by somebody in Detroit, and the revenues could, one could say, well, it's not a local business, it's not benefiting the local community anymore because it's owned by somebody in Detroit. So I think saying that it should come back for review makes sense.
You can say that about any business in town.
Can I caution you for a second? We're a small
Go for it.
town. We don't have legal counsel at our planning commissions typically. And I don't think that that's advisable to wade off into that restriction. I think what you're doing here and how the resolution's written is you're approving this business at this location. Yes, it's a formula business. It's sort of like, doesn't have all the trappings of a typical formula business that you would be worried about. And yes, the use permit, as it's written, would go with the land. If somebody else came in, took over this business at this location with these prescribed number of visitors and vehicle circulations, yes, they could sell the business to somebody else running the same business. If someone else wants to come in and open another business under different circumstances, we could revisit it if it was like a Gold's Gym and a different operation, if you will.
Yeah, and if they started operating too differently, they'd be violating their conditions and the resolution, and then we could bring the use permit back.
I admire your caution, but I think we've really tried to make the findings for you. There will be other occasions when real large-scale formula businesses come in, probably in the not-too-distant future, and we will be dealing with the same sort of nuances of how can they succeed as a formula business in Fairfax by not looking like a formula business. But that's, so we have process here.
So the business that will be set up won't be a franchise, right? It won't be a franchise if it's owned by the owners. Okay, so that in and of itself makes it a little bit unique.
I would have the applicant clarify that for you on the record.
If you would, if you don't mind. And also...
And just for the record, the code doesn't say you can't have a franchise.
Yes, what he said is correct. This location will not be a franchised location. It'll be owned and operated by the founders of the Daily Method.
But in theory, you could, after a number of years, sell it as a franchise to somebody else with the Daily Method, which I guess if we passed it would be okay.
That is a possibility.
Yeah.
That's correct. Thanks, Doug.
I was just going to reiterate what Shelley, I'm hearing a lot of strong support for this business and that you have covered a lot of the bases here. And, we certainly have traffic issues, but they're general traffic issues, maybe not specific traffic issues. But in general, I'm hearing a lot of consensus. If there's anyone who wants to speak directly to this particular business or...
So in the future, if the business were sold and it was going to still be sort of physical fitness, but it would conflict with, say, established businesses in Fairfax, that it probably wouldn't fly. That is to say, if it was, dance, aerobic dance type thing, but it was a formula aerobic dance franchise, say, or say if 24-hour Nautilus wanted to move in.
Well, we would take the new use and review it for compliance with this resolution, and if it didn't meet the standards that were set forth and the conditions that were set forth in the resolution, we would tell them that they have to apply as a franchise, a different franchise store. 24-hour fitness doesn't comply with the resolution that you're adopting.
Yeah, I just think we have to be really, really clear, because the situation now is far different from when it was in 2001, given the corporate plutocracy. So I'll shut up now.
And just a reminder that the traffic impact study goes up to council after you for final verification or approval. And we rely on the learned professionals to do the work initially in our peer review. And I also want to thank Mr. Walker for coming and talking about his concerns on the line of sight and the bump and left turns on Sir Francis Drake. He spoke at council when they approved the methodology. And I hope you show back up and voice any concerns if you still have them in the final approval of council. And then one other comment on the bicycle parking. The applicant said there's parking inside, and I didn't quite hear, but there is parking on site outside behind the bus stop. And finally, we looked in there may have been a discussion between the fire chief or fire personnel and the applicant with regards to removing the junipers on the side, but it actually didn't show up in the stipulations of the fire department. And again, they'll have to go through the tree committee to remove those trees.
And the other that was mentioned was the speed bump, and I'm not hazarding to try to open up the full plans, but I'm assuming somewhere in the plans the speed bump is being removed. It's not on the front page, but the speed bump, I can't open up the full sheets right now. On the front page, it's not showing a speed bump, but we also heard that the speed bump is going to be removed as part of the design, which I think it's good to reflect if it's not on the drawings.
Thank you.
So, all right.
So the only thing that I would suggest adding, both formula business and doesn't understand all of that you can have a formula business, you just have to abide by the stipulations required to approve it, would be to say add a number 10 on the whereas compliance with the following conditions, and that just says use of this site shall remain consistent with the approval stipulations required for a formula business. And that they already do, they're planning on doing it. It just adds that level of acknowledging that the site shall remain consistent with that, because that way we've approved it. A lot of the stuff is in here, but that just kind of is a blanket statement that would just...
Totally at your discretion to add that. I would say it's implied in the resolution, but if you want to add that to highlight it.
I do think it is implied, and I completely agree with you, and I just think it would be helpful to put it in there so that if anybody ever questioned it, it was really clear.
I think we got it.
Yeah, I agree with Shelley. I think that's a good idea, just because the hackles are going to go up on the backs of a few necks when they hear formula business. But if that is made clear, it'll probably mollify those people.
So can I just clarify what I heard you? What I heard you say is that it shall remain consistent with the stipulations of a formula business. Did you mean the stipulations of this formula business?
No, the use of the site shall remain consistent with the approval stipulations required for a formula business. In other words, prior to this, those 10 questions or whatever that you have answered on here, or 8 questions or whatever, so we have to be affirmative to those 8 questions. The use of this site shall always have to remain affirmative to those 8 questions. That's what I'm getting at. So that's why they have to remain consistent with the approval stipulations required for a formula business.
But the answers are specific to this business, not any formula business. So I think that's what Linda is saying, is that you probably want to make it specific to this business and the findings. I mean, that's the thing, is the resolution isn't repeating the answers to the 8 questions.
Sure,
but
for this formula business, change A to this, and that works, yeah. Sure. So it's item number 10 on, whereas the commission has approved the project subject to the applicant's compliance with the following conditions. Item number 10 would be use of the site shall remain consistent with the approval stipulations required for this formula business.
So, and just to be clear, when we move on this, we're working off the red line version that was provided on the desk today, not the one that was in the packet.
I understand.
Thank you. Sorry, so it would be number 13. That's what you're saying?
No, it's number 10, but it's a different number 9.
Sorry. Are you in the right whereas?
It's a different whereas.
It's this whereas, not that whereas. It's number 10.
on the second whereas. Other than that, I'm perfectly happy to move forward.
So, and so, just what I heard, we'll make a recommendation, but it's still going to go to the town council for full approval, essentially, so. Or,
just the traffic.
But if they don't approve the traffic study, then they're not. The use permit is contingent on their approval of the traffic study, essentially.
Correct.
I just, one last thing, I wanted to make sure that the McIntoshes, you're going to be renting that retail space, and there are, you know, restrictions on what you can, who you can rent to in that space. For instance, you can't, without a variance, say you couldn't rent it out as offices. You know, if you look at the town code, there's a whole list of approved uses for the central commercial district. So just be aware of that. There are a handful of things that if you wanted to rent to those particular occupancies, you'd have to jump through some more hoops.
Okay. Any other issues to be addressed before we take an action? Okay, I would entertain an action then, seeing none.
So I'll move to approve application 13-99 and resolution 13-5. And I'll say the red line versions of those two documents. Adding number 10 on whereas on 2. So whereas the commission has approved the project subject to the applicant's compliance with the following conditions. Item 10 would be use of this site shall remain consistent with the approved stipulations for this formula business. Is that right?
Yep.
You read it before.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all for showing up.
Appeal period.
There is a 10-day appeal period and a $500 fee. I guess I have to formally say it was approved. And then that. Let's just keep going. How are you guys doing? Keep going? Great. Let's move on. Item number 6. 2626 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, application 1312.
Okay, the subject site is 22 acres in size and is already developed with the church, parking lot, the main school building located at the front of the property adjacent to Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. The school is applying to modify their school use permit to relocate a storage shed at the southwest corner of the site. That doesn't make any sense. Southwest corner of the site to the southeast corner and to construct a 960 square foot classroom in the location of the shed, immediately adjacent to the main school building. The property is located in a planned development district and which has no set development standards for coverage, yards, parking, or site planning. It uses language that says that the standards that you apply to the PDD zone, if there are no standards, shall be regulated by the standards of the residential, commercial, or industrial zoning district most similar in nature and function to the proposed PDD use. Therefore, staff directed the applicants to locate the building so that it meets the minimum 6-foot front and 5-foot side setbacks required in the residential RS6 zone district, which allows schools and churches with the approval of a use permit by the commission. The town code also doesn't have any parking requirements for school structures, and it requires 1 parking space for every 6 seats for churches and other places of general assembly. The lack of a parking requirement for schools makes it difficult for staff to justify requiring any set number of spaces for the combined use of the site. The uses really don't overlap in the times that they operate there. So what we did is we asked them to provide something in writing indicating that their uses don't conflict with, and they haven't had any problems with parking. The project also requires design review. And we've reviewed the architecture of the school, and the resulting structure with the board and batting articulation will appear functional and suited for its use as a classroom while complementing the existing buildings on the site, so we feel that it complies with the design review regulations, and therefore we're recommending that you approve application 1312 based on the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the staff report. I think the applicants have a presentation, right? I mean, to use our, yeah.
So before we go with that, let's just see if there's any questions.
Oh,
Although we might want to entertain a presentation before questions because it might answer the questions. So
I think
if we can switch it
will
around.
also give you some more information on the design of the
Okay.
building, which I didn't necessarily have enough information on.
So unless anyone objects, I'd like to switch it around and have the presentation, and then we'll just ask questions. So if you could come up.
Good evening. My name is Andres Edwards. I live at 14 Azalea. And I'd like to first tell you a little bit about Cascade Canyon School and then introduce the team from the builders and the team from our school. I've been a parent at the school, and I'm a board member and chair of the facilities committee. I've had my 3 kids who have gone through Cascade Canyon, and I've been there for the last 11 years. Cascade Canyon was established in 1981, and it's been on that site for the last 25 years. So we've been a long-term tenant with Christ Lutheran Church. I want to read to you a letter from our school director, Becky Hauseman, who unfortunately was not able to be here, but I want to read to you an excerpt that will give you some additional information. She says the following: Dear Planning Commissioners, I am so excited that our request to add a modular science and math classroom to the campus of Cascade Canyon School is going before the Planning Commission tonight. I warmly ask for your support of our project and regret that I could not be here tonight. I boarded a plane on Wednesday to take our daughter to look at colleges in Midwest and attend a family reunion, but I'm with you in spirit. In the past 6 years, as director of Cascade Canyon School, I have proudly seen our small school enrollment grow from 42 students to our current 63. With this growth, we have outgrown our current classrooms. In recent years, there has been increased demand for middle school spots at our school, and we have had to turn students away because we simply don't have the classrooms to accommodate growth in our middle school. Yet it is extremely difficult to financially sustain such a small business. We must rely on modest continued growth in enrollment to responsibly work towards our strategic goals of paying our teachers market rate salaries and continuing to build a long-term staff. If we are able to gain the permission from the Planning Commission to expand our facilities in this way, it would serve 2 mutual purposes: help ensure the health of our school and help our school serve more members of our community. This new classroom and its adjacent office will allow us to begin to expand in grades 6 through 8 without increasing our student-teacher ratio. Our small class sizes are a trademark of our school. And as the letter goes on, but I'll submit a copy of it for your review. I'd like to introduce to you our team. We have Lisa Battle from Healthy Buildings Technology Group is the building group that we've hired to help us with this project. And Lisa Battle is here as the vice president. And then Steve Peters is the project manager. And he'll be doing a presentation in just a minute. And then from Cascade Canyon School, we have Carl Vavrek back there, who's a board member and a parent at the school. And he's an architect and engineer. And Karen Wilhoit, who is a board member and also the math and science teacher at Cascade Canyon School. And we have parents as well who will can speak for our project. So with that, I'll pass it on to Lisa, or Steve rather, to do the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chairman, and members of the board and citizens of Fairfax. My name is Steve Peterson. I'm from Healthy Buildings at 3432 Valverde in Napa, California. We're delighted to support this project and the expansion of Cascade Canyon Schools being able to serve more students in the Fairfax area. And I just have a brief presentation showing the building that we are talking about building, and we'll be happy to take questions after that. First, a little bit about our company. we've been building for 30 years, and we're building a lot of green projects, the first one in 1983. But in 1999, we transitioned to dark green, so right now we only build dark or green buildings, sustainable construction, and we specialize in the design and delivery of healthy, beautiful, durable, and especially high efficiency solutions. There's probably a lot of this information that's familiar to people who are familiar with green construction. This 46 element chart here is something that we developed as key features of the healthy classroom, but it's key features of all of our approach in green construction. There's just a lot of icons up there, and in the time allowed, you can just see we address high efficacy lighting, water use, indoor air quality, structural design. There's many items there, and we'll be happy to talk to you about those in detail, or you can go to our website for further information. Healthy classrooms support student success. 75% of respondents in the K-12 sector cited increased students' performance as an important element in the decision to build green. This information came from the Center for Green Schools. And it really is true that healthy air, healthy light, adequate light is good for student achievement, 15% faster in math, 23% faster in reading, student progress. Also, student progress 7 to 8% faster in classrooms where windows were able to just be open instead of fixed windows. It seems basic, but it's really true that it's a detail that we pay a lot of attention to. So moving on to the actual site. You see in your plans there, the subject construction is within the orange dashed circle there. And currently there's a small shed. It's a theater shed, theater prop shed, I think it is. And we're going to replace that and put it on the opposite side of the site and build the subject construction, the improvements, right behind the existing school building. You'll also see, back up just a second, Lisa, we did make careful consideration to recommendations and conditions of the staff report for the fire access and for setbacks, and it's all been designed into the plan. This multi-image slide shows you from top left to right the proposed healthy classroom site from Mitchell Drive on the east side, which is open except for that shed. Just a property view from Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. There is the subject shed, front view of the existing storage shed that will be removed and relocated. And then at the bottom are color renderings of the proposed healthy classroom as seen from Mitchell Drive. Key features of a healthy classroom are high insulation values, tight building envelope, promotes high energy efficiency and low operating costs. It's good for the environment, and it's good for the client. It helps them out by creating a high efficiency building. We achieve high indoor air quality through no or low volatile organic compounds, no formaldehyde, smooth surfaces that are resistant to mold growth, no carpeting that collects dust and dirt and other things and gases off, natural light, windows that open, durable materials. The exterior of the building is clad in fiber cement. We use aluminum windows, not vinyl, and we have a corrugated metal roof. The heating and cooling system is virtually noiseless for less stress and disturbance within the building, and low water use fixtures. This slide is the existing site. The following slide places the building, and this is the view from Mitchell. Again, just pictures of the school science building as proposed. It has 4 windows on one side, 2 on the end. There are 2 doors. One is optional. It has a board and batten style exterior that is very attractive next to the other buildings in fiber cement, which is very durable. And that is our quick overview of the building.
Thank you.
Yep.
Should we take any design questions here? Or any other questions for staff, since we didn't have that chance, so go ahead.
I just have really one quick one. Is this built on site, or is it prefab and brought in as a structure or unit?
This is on a standard slab. It is built, it's a steel frame building. It's panelized. Components are built in a factory, actually in our shop, out of steel. It is seismically very strong. It has half the weight of wood, but 3 times the strength. We have a very flexible technology where we can panelize a design, then we pack it up, bring it on site, and it's assembled as a kit. But it is not a modular type of unit. It is not a trailer home style unit. Oh, it is treated as conventional construction and qualifies for standard inspection routine.
And what's the lifespan on a structure like this one?
It's very long. In fact, go ahead. Yeah, please do.
Sorry, I'll just step in. Our buildings can last 50 to 100 years.
It's a standard slab foundation. There's elevations, but it doesn't tell us what's touching the ground. Can you explain to me a little bit more about the foundation and the grading that's required to get there?
Well, actually, the foundation hasn't been designed as of yet. We're waiting to get through design review, but we are planning to put it on a concrete slab foundation.
Okay, so it's a sloping site. Are you going to require, I know that it's not designed yet, but retaining walls in that back corner?
If it is
dropping,
yes.
Or does it come up?
If it is required, we will submit that as part of the construction documents. We do work with a structural engineer, and we do have a geotechnical report on the site as well.
And is the existing storage shed that's in place in the picture, is that one just going to be moved to that new location as is? And I know the site quite well. Is the location where that's going to be now, drivers will be able to see that storage shed whether they're traveling east or west on Sir Francis Drake, or is it set behind in the trees?
It would be, if you know the site well, there is a garbage enclosure. It would be right next to the garbage enclosure.
How big is that shed?
I believe it's 12.5 by 12.5.
So in the relocation of shed, is that subject to permits because it's over 120 square feet, or as an accessory building?
You're asking if it would need a building permit to relocate it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or subject to setbacks, or all the things that accessory buildings are subject to when they're over the 120 square feet.
Yeah, the location they've chosen meets setback regulations. Are you going to put it on some kind of a new foundation? I didn't check out what type of foundation it's on.
Currently, it's on a pier block foundation,
But
so it would be on that same type of foundation.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to need a building permit unless they run electrical to it or something, yeah.
And are there, back to what Shelby was asking about the foundation design and possible soil removal, are there sufficient, do you feel comfortable with the conditions that it will cover?
Yeah, this is going
approval
to need
for
this
that?
is going to need a building permit. So they'll have to provide detailed construction drawings, and if they need to, excavation would only come to you if it was a really large amount, and I don't think it's based on the slope that it's going to need that. So it'll need a building permit, and they'll check out the foundation adequacy during the plan check review.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the siting? It looks like the southeast corner lines up with the existing building, but you've got some trees on this site that are really close to this proposed construction. So can you tell me why it's not like scooched up in there a little bit further to get away from the trees, or is it just Can you tell me about your siting decisions?
The site decision.
Well, we kind of, when we sited the building, we wanted to be in line with the edge of an existing 7th and 8th grade classroom. The further up we went up the hill, the more of a steep incline it would be, so it becomes more of an issue in terms of retaining walls and all that. We're also really constrained because of the property boundary on one side with Canyon Village, and there's Mitchell, which is the road up there. And there's an access area right by Mitchell too. So we're sort of just this one area where it just fits. And we didn't want to keep pushing it up the hill because then we run into more of a slope issue, and we wanted to also to be in alignment and aesthetically more pleasing if it's the edge is right along with the edge of the 7A classroom. It's hard to describe it. That's, yeah.
So can you tell me if is there flexibility in like locations of doors and things? There's an existing redwood there that is right now slated to be removed, but looks like a pretty nice tree. Is there some flexibility in that door location so we can start looking at possibly preserving that tree?
The tree that we have slated for removal actually is going to be required for removal, and we'll have to go to the tree committee to do that. But it is in a 20-foot egress, which is a building code, state building code, that requires a 20-foot egress for fire, for the kids to be able to leave the building should there be any type of emergency, and it has to be unobstructed.
And so is the deck and stairs that are there, is that considered obstruction? I mean, or that's part of the egress
It's
required?
part, yeah, the whole area that's shown there with the hash marks, that's a 20-foot wide egress that has to be unobstructed.
Yeah. Yeah, but if we can go looking at
Any other questions for the applicant? And then we'll move on. Oh, go ahead.
When I was at the site today, I noticed that there's some overhead utility lines that may impact the location here, and I don't know, have you discussed with the various utility groups what needs to be required to if they need to be relocated or what?
Yeah, so to the best of our knowledge, those are data lines. So it's actually Comcast and AT&T. The PG&E power lines will go in another direction. And we have been in touch with them. It's hard to get them to really respond, but we have been in constant communication with them to say to them that we're going to have to raise them to a minimum of 14 feet to get the height for the building. And that's a plan that we have going forward.
Okay, any other questions of this part of the applicant group? Are we hearing from other people or just from the?
Well, we have, yeah.
Or they could speak as part of the, the next segment is public comment, so if we could do it that way too.
We have,
Okay.
Karen Wilhoit.
Okay. So
Science and math teacher. Oh.
Yeah, so we'll just move to you guys can go ahead and sit down, and we'll go ahead and move to the public comment period, and come up to the podium and say your name and address, and you can tell us your statement.
Sure. I'm Karen Woolhoit, and I'm the 5th through 8th grade science teacher at Cascade Canyon School, and I teach 6th through 8th grade math. I'm very excited to be here tonight. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And I just finished teaching my 4th year at the school. My first year, we had 12 7th and 8th grade students in a class. This year, we had 18. And I don't know if you've walked through the building, but the current science classroom is more of a kitchen. And the whole building for the middle school is actually an old house. One of the classrooms is housed in an old bedroom, and the other classroom is a converted garage. And so currently, science is housed in what used to be a kitchen, which has some conveniences, but space is a challenge. One thing that makes our science program stellar is that we do a lot of hands-on science, and so lots of labs. And with 18 bodies in a classroom, it's a space constraint. And another problem is that being the kitchen, it's a thoroughfare. So for students to access the bathroom or the water fountain, they have to walk through the classroom. So it's a little bit of a challenge, and we hope to continue growing the school. We have a lot of families, most of our families are local. And we would like to continue to grow the middle school especially, but we can't fit any more bodies in the science classroom as it is. So we're really looking forward to expanding and letting the kids enjoy science in as much space as they need. I think hands-on labs is what makes science fun. Instead of just memorizing terms and remembering laws, we like to actually teach science as science. So we're looking forward to an opportunity to have an actual science classroom. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Asher, a resident at 3 Roca in Fairfax. Been living there with my wife since '97. And I have a son named Skylar who's been going to Cascade since kindergarten, and that's 5 years. And he is a complete math and science wizard. I was actually going to bring him tonight, but he's in bed asleep right now. It's a little late for a 10-year-old. He's really looking forward to the new classroom, and he wanted me to tell you that he wants a new classroom because he doesn't want to learn in a kitchen anymore. He doesn't want to deal with that. And I believe in kitchen table wisdom, but I think we can do better. So I just think it's a huge improvement for the school and aesthetically pleasing, and it's a green building, and I really hope that you support this. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Dan Gottsagen. I've lived in Fairfax at 90 Crest Road in the Deer Park area for 9 years. I have 2 daughters in the school. One, Samantha, is going into 5th grade and will be able to use the classroom, which we're really looking forward to. And also a younger daughter, Ariella, that's in kindergarten and will be going into 1st grade. And I think for a moment, I'd just like to speak a little bit about the school and the intentionality that they've gone through this entire process with. You know, we moved to Fairfax 9 years ago and have absolutely loved being here. And I think so much of what we love about Fairfax is much of what we love about Cascade Canyon School. It's a very small, intimate, friendly environment like this town is. And our kids, you know, while the public schools offer a lot, the ratio of students to teachers and the overall size of the classrooms, you know, just really don't offer for our kids what they need. So I just believe Cascade Canyon's a real gem, and I know expanding in this way, I know that the board has been working for years on a very green, thoughtful way to expand just marginally to grow and support the school, and I would just ask you to support the school if you could. Thanks.
So I'm Carl Vavrick, 170 Canyon. So I'm on the board, and only for about a year, and I work with Andres on helping to develop this project, and I've worked on a lot of the technical aspects of the foundation and whatnot, and soils report. But as a parent, I supported it even before I became a board member. A couple years ago, Becky, the director, started asking that she really wants a science classroom. She kind of targets each year something to improve, whether it's curriculum, new teachers. We've improved some of the lower campus where we have our elementary school, and the upper campus where we get a lot of draw for the middle school students. Finally got her attention. My daughter is currently in 6th grade and will be in 7th grade, so she'll be using the classroom, and my son will be using it in a couple years. And so I've given money for a couple years before becoming a board member just to support this project, and I kind of echo what the other people think. It's a great opportunity. We have a great science curriculum, great teachers. The space, I mean, Karen's done a lot with a little bit of space, but there's a real good opportunity to make it a great space. So appreciate your support.
Good evening, I'm Tara Ferguson. I've been a Fairfax resident since the early 90s. Local business owner. I was the original owner of Cafe Amsterdam and put that in 1995. Sold it in '05, and then when the guy that I sold it to, when it went under, took it back in '08 and reopened as the Sleeping Lady. So have been operating that since it opened, and Sleeping Lady really believes in supporting all the local schools. We're a yes sponsor, and we do a lot of school fundraisers, and the reason why we do this is because we really believe that the variety of schools that our community offers and the diversity is really important. And so we're all really strong supporters of that. And my personal experience of why this was so valuable and why I believe so much in Cascade Canyon School is that my son, Kalen, is now a student at Cascade Canyon. And he went to Ross Valley schools all the way kindergarten through 5th grade, just fine, no problems. Then he hit 6th grade, went to White Hill, and he just bottomed out. Did not do well, didn't blend in well. He had a really hard time, got very depressed. I would drop him off at school, he'd be crying every day. So we switched him to Cascade Canyon. He completely flourished. He totally blossomed. And for him, that was the right environment, and it met his needs that was not able to be met. So I see the importance of meeting the needs. For some kids, middle school, they need a smaller school. And so I can see our personal experience of how incredibly valuable it was that there was a spot for Kalen at Cascade Canyon. Then speaking about the math and science program at the school, it's what it has done for Kalen is made him really excited about math and science. And the labs that Karen teaches in that little kitchen are so fabulous. And I've actually happened to have, because it's really in an area that you go through and is easily interrupted, I've been able to interrupt the class and see the kids so excited about what she's doing with these hands-on projects and everything. They're all so enthusiastically invested in this. And I think that it's really important that they have the opportunity to have a class that's uninterrupted so that they can really focus. So would really appreciate your support on this. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's bring this back to the commission for, again, conversation and action. Would anybody like to start?
I actually just had one further question, and if the building goes in as planned, what would the increase in the student enrollment be at the school and any additional staffing needs?
Well, the classroom is, can hold up to 16 students, so it essentially allows us to double the size of the 7A classroom, and it can also have, we can also include 5-6. The upper school is 5-6, and then 7A. We have combined grades, so those 4 grades, students can pour in there. It also gives us a lot more flexibility in terms of how we use the space, because it gives us a whole other space where we could be teaching art, or have different kinds of uses, flexible space for that. So even though it's slated as a science classroom and math, we have the capability to also use it for other purposes.
Anyone else?
I've got a concern for the large valley oak that is just off the property. It's not in this arborist report, but it's a tree that is impacted significantly by the creation of a slab foundation. And I'd be interested in entertaining kind of other kinds of foundation, but it's on the site plan. It shows that the valley oak is 15 feet from the building, but that's from the center of the trunk, and it's actually much closer than that. The bottom of the root flare is much closer than that, and I think the excavation for the foundation of this building in that location is slightly problematic, and I don't think it's addressed by the arborist report. So,
Can I speak to that, or you want to?
please,
Okay.
is that okay?
Sure.
Because go for it.
So that tree is not on our property, so we didn't have it covered on the arborist report. impetus for the arborist report actually was town staff, because before we learned about the egress, the 20-foot egress, which was brought up by the Ross Valley Fire Marshal, we already knew that our foundation and the excavation for it was going to be close to the tall redwood, which is dashed on the site. So staff said, well, if you're going to keep this redwood, you should show us that you can. And so we engaged the arborist to look at that redwood, and we had an egress walk going nearby another one, and so those are the two redwoods that are in that report. And our intention actually was to try to maintain those trees throughout construction, and they gave us in the report, and you can probably see some of the requirements in order to try to save them. They said you can do it, it'll slow down construction and cost some money, and then there's also some problems in the long run with the viability of those trees. So they actually recommended, if you want to do the best thing, to remove both of them and replant them. And so, but we don't really want to remove both of them, so that's why only one is indicated as being removed at this point. So my feeling, and we could get this verified, I don't know how you deal with taking care of a tree that's not on your property, but the root system for that redwood, the tall one which is dashed, is much closer to our excavation. Perhaps
The one that's slated to be removed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we already have protection measures outlined in the report for that tree. I would imagine that we would be doing similar things, such as clipping the roots at excavation. It's not a very deep foundation. Right now, the soils report says that it must begin 6 to 12 inches below existing grade, and that's the low end of the building, so that would be the extent at the top of it. It'll probably be 12 or 24 inches deep, so it's
Okay.
not going that deep.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really see any extensive tree protection measures recommended in that arborist report. I mean, I'm a landscape architect and I do tree protection plans all the time, and when you have this kind of construction going on, this close to a heritage oak, whether you own it or not, you have a responsibility to protect it. So it seems to me that at the very least we need to see a more extensive and thoughtful tree protection plan for the oak tree. The redwood that's to be removed, we don't need a tree protection plan for that because it's gone. The other redwood definitely needs that as well. But if you go stand where the proposed classroom is, almost the whole classroom is covered by the drip line of the tree. And in tree protection, we protect out minimum to the edge of the drip line of the tree. And oftentimes some arborists will ask us to go 10 or 20 feet beyond that because that's how far the root systems go. And often those root systems are within that 6 to 12 inches of surface soil. So slab foundations are the worst ones for those root systems. So that's why I'm asking about the foundation, because there are pier and grade beam kinds of foundations, there's cantilevered foundations, there are lots of things that you can do to protect the root system of that tree. We can't weigh in on that, but it's a big concern because it's an amazing tree, and not only is it an amazing tree, it's going to shade it in the hot times. It's perfectly sited to shade it in the summer. It's a deciduous tree, so it's going to allow sun on that building in the winter. It just totally buys into the green building. I mean, I understand Andres is, if anybody's going to do sustainability right, it's going to be Andres. So I totally trust you, and I love this project, and Becky's a good friend of mine, but I would like to make sure that that tree is protected in the utmost diligent way.
Yeah, I mean,
with the design of this foundation.
I think we agree. Perhaps we would need some direction how we work on stuff that's not on it, or do we just work with the part that's on our property? I don't know.
Well, you can't. I mean, for instance, you can't store construction materials on the other property, so technically you shouldn't have to protect the tree in that area. It's the area where you will have disturbance and where you would be storing materials and where heavy machinery would be coming through, and so you do the protection on your property.
Have that done and extended to that tree, yeah.
So Shelby, is there a recommendation, in the recommended conditions, would we add a condition for a tree protection plan, for them to submit a tree protection plan?
Yes, I would add a recommendation for review by the town arborist of this tree report and creation of a thorough tree protection plan to be submitted at the time of building permit. Because that's an amazing tree.
Is there any other conversation?
Can anyone answer what is the grade at the corner, adjacent to the tree? I mean, is it possible to have two types of foundation system, maybe away from the tree, closer up the hill, where retaining walls required? You can have slab foundation, and closer to the tree, where you're higher off the grade, you can have a raised floor type of foundation. You might want to explore those types of options.
I guess there's sort of two ways to approach it. One is performance oriented, sort of the way you were going in terms of protecting the tree with whatever approach is incorporated. The other would be more prescriptive way, and since we don't have the actual design of the slab, it's still an open area of design to be addressed. I would just recommend you maybe go into performance direction and then let us at the building stage deal with the actual way it's going to be accomplished.
It was more of a suggestion. Because I'm taking a look at the site plan. It does look like there is quite a bit of grade difference, because I just noticed that there needs to be a ramp to the front of the building. I'm not quite sure. I think there probably needs to be some adjustment in the final building permit plans, because I noticed there's like over a 4-foot grade difference from, so it could be, over a 40-foot ramp or so. So I think there's some opportunities. We have some varying grade differences that could be looked at.
Your point's well taken.
Okay. I'm very happy with this, and I love the idea of adding classroom space for junior high students in our community. There's a whole bubble of kids on the way that are going to be in junior high real soon. So the more alternatives we can have for them and the more space we can have in them for our community that's green is fantastic. So I appreciate your diligence in this and the contribution to our kids and our community. And I appreciate you got the tree stuff too. So I speak for the tree.
Yeah, I second that. I think this is the first time we've had a kind of an application in a planned PDD zone recently. So I think the approach that staff took makes good sense to me. And I think this is one where we don't have a design in front of us. Right. So we're not used to that either. Usually we're looking at the designs. That's why we're asking all these questions. So, but yeah, overall, I think it's a great school. I've heard lots of great things about it. And my kids go to St. Rita's, and it's the same idea. It's the small school, and that kind of opportunity is really important and unique. And so, and I'm actually very interested in the design, and I see a new periodic table for the science wall. So it'll be fun to talk about. So.
Have further comments, or if anyone's ready for action based on what they're hearing from their colleagues, we could do that too.
Well, I think you're to be commended for your efforts. Reminds me of the school I went to. We had our math classes up in the attic of this old mansion, and it went from there. So got a little hot in June, but it was an interesting educational experience, and I'm sure Cascade Canyon is not your normal school, which is great. So you're to be commended. I think your design is responsible and well executed.
entertain a motion?
Do you want to do it?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve application 1312, 980 square foot portable classroom. It's not really a portable classroom, it's a real classroom. Relocatable, but a real classroom. With the recommended conditions and the addition that we have review by the town arborist of the tree report and a tree protection plan for the heritage oak nearby. It may also be worth just talking to the neighbor and making, arrangements to protect the whole thing. So that's my motion.
So we have a motion?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. So the motion passes, as does application 1312. There's a 10-day appeal period with a $500 fee. Thank you all very much for coming this evening. Wonderful. Okay, we have one more application on the agenda before we move on to a discussion. So let's do this application and then we'll take a short break and then move on to discussion. So item number 7, 767 Center Boulevard, and we're wondering, and we have one commissioner who has to recuse herself. So 767 Center Boulevard, application 137, request for use permit to operate a dog washing facility with pet retail from an existing commercial building. Could we have the staff report?
Yes, the Central Commercial Zone District in our code right now uses an antiquated method for describing permitted uses, taking the form of a long list of businesses that are allowed and indicating that any use not listed or any use that combines types of uses requires a use permit. So this business, the applicant's proposing remodeling 2,048 square feet of commercial space into grooming facilities with bathtubs and drying stations for pets, while also providing a boutique-type pet supply retail store as well. The facility would provide for self-serve and full-serve dog washing, along with some other minimal grooming services such as nail trimming. The commercial space is located between Avatar Community Business Center and the Iron Springs Pub and Brewery. The proposed use hours and operation plan should not conflict with those of the neighboring businesses as long as the conditions recommended by staff in the staff report are complied with. And therefore, we're recommending that you approve application 1317 based on the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the staff report.
Okay, are there any questions for the staff?
So I was just trying to understand how, like, a restaurant and how would you consider, like, that there is no conflict or contradiction between, like, a pet facility and the restaurant with outdoor seating? So I guess it's more of the outdoor seating part, not the restaurant.
The outdoor seating, Iron Springs appears to allow dogs to be tied up to their outdoor seating for long periods of time. So the applicants have indicated that their operation, people will be bringing their dogs inside. We've conditioned it that they not tie them up unattended outside. Okay. So we feel that the proposed business won't impact the restaurant any more than the restaurant allows itself to be impacted right now.
Yeah, I think it's just good to hear the process. Thanks.
Is this considered a formula business as well?
My understanding is that there's only 2 of these, and it doesn't seem to meet the definitions of a formula business, so I would say no. Someone else might disagree, but
not franchised. There's just two sites.
One in the city, and this is the second proposed.
Owned by the same people or 2 different people?
Same people.
Oh, okay. Right. Any other questions, or should we get the applicant up here? Seems fairly straightforward, so let's go ahead and get the applicant up.
Hi, my name is Jason O'Hara, and this is my partner Steve Davis, and we're the owners of Canine Scrub Club. And I don't know, other than what Linda already said and what we've included in with the packet, I guess I wanted to open it up if you guys had questions for us. It's a little nerve-wracking to. I'm glad that there's less people out here now, so that's good.
If you stay late enough, we clear the place out. So, are there any questions of the applicant?
I have one question. So, not full-service grooming, basic bathing, and limited time in which the owners would need to come pick up their pets. What if an owner doesn't come in the prescribed amount of time? What would happen?
Excellent question. We actually have procedures to kind of guard against that. We offer self-serve where a customer will come in and wash their own dog. And it's really kind of assisted serve because we kind of help them through the process a lot. On the full serve bathing where they actually drop the dog off with us, it's for a finite period of time, either 30 minutes or an hour. And after that hour, there's very hefty late fees for picking up your dog late, and that's intentional because we require a staff member be with the dog, leash in hand at all times during the bathing. We never cage or pin an animal, so that's how we get around that. We've only had, I think, one late fee where we've had to implement.
Sounds like
since we opened.
preschool late. So I was going to say, it sounds like preschool late fees.
Yeah.
They work. Any other questions of the applicant? All right, we'll just bring it back. Oh, I'm sorry. Public. If there's anyone here by the public to speak to this, then we can hear that. Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry, I have one more.
Sorry, one more question.
Just
You can come back
came
up
to
because there's no public.
Are there any special requirements like for the septic when you're doing grooming and things like that? Are there traps that you guys have to maintain?
Yes, we have. We use hair traps that are professional hair traps that salons use.
So it's similar to like a salon.
Yes, so they're cleaned once a week, and so there's double hair catching.
Okay. We have one in the actual tub, and then we have a second trap system that we underneath those. So that kind of catches.
Thanks.
Okay. Still no public. All right, bring it back for conversation and action.
We don't have any dog grooming now in the town of Fairfax. We have stuff over in San Anselmo that's your competition.
This seems like a fairly straightforward, we have to do it because it wasn't on the list kind of application to me, so I'm perfectly comfortable with it myself.
I think that it's probably a good use for the center as a whole. There's not any other uses, and I think it's a good application.
Hearing no dissent, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve application 1317, 767 Center Boulevard with the conditions, the recommended conditions set forth in the application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Your request, your permit, your application has been approved.
There's an appeal period?
Yeah, and there is a 10-day appeal period with a $500 fee, so
And
10 days.
And Madam Chair, I just want to
Yes.
thank you so much for waiting patiently.
Yes.
I want to thank you for waiting patiently. I'm sorry it takes so long sometimes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So should we take a 2-minute break to go to the bathroom, and then we'll be right back because we know we got more. 2 minutes.
To order and move forward with item number 8, a continued discussion of our draft ordinance relating to leaf
blowers and other things that make noise.
Okay, Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'd like to introduce our intern, Arijit Sen, who has been with us 5 weeks and has 3 weeks to go. He's a graduate student at the Department of City and Regional Planning at UC Berkeley, my alma mater program. And he's been wonderful to have on board. His parents right now are in Mumbai, India. Hello, watching. It is about 10 o'clock in the morning there. So again, what I told you at council about a week and a half ago, we may not let him go. You may have to decide to move here. But anyway, we've been really blessed, and also his 2-month full-time internship with us is being covered expense-wise by a fellowship that was also granted by the Department of City and Regional Planning. So, and in Arijit's hometown of Mumbai, India, he is an architect. And so we've been giving him all sorts of experiences in his 5 weeks. And one of the experiences was to take the last little edits of the modifications to the noise ordinance and present them tonight. So without further ado, Arijit.
All right, so based on the last time's Planning Commission meeting, I incorporated the changes into the previous, into the town code of the noise section, and you have it with you with the track changes. And
there were some friendly amendments that were suggested by Commissioner Ketchum on just some language cleanup. Were those provided in the
no, we haven't made those changes.
So you did?
No, we haven't made.
Would you like to articulate those?
It was basically for in the language I had written Saturday and holidays. So the issue was whether to make it weekends and holidays for that same timing for the noise. So that's something you would have to confirm.
Well, actually, we're not going to. We shut it down. We didn't have the actual file. I'm sorry. And I had Linda stay a little later for this item, just in case you had any questions, because she was here for 1 or 2 of the meetings that I wasn't in the beginning, because this is what, our fifth meeting or something. But I want to get her home soon.
We've gotten so good at doing these, though.
Yeah, I know.
4 meetings. It's not 5 meetings.
Okay, 4 meetings. So I think that, did you understand? Do you want to mention the edits again?
Yeah, so what I had suggested is, and I think it was just to make them consistent. So under Prohibited Acts 82060, C, there's construction, demolition, domestic power tools. C1 is that you can't do things from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. on weekends or holidays, or on weekday hours from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., and on weekends and holidays between the hours of 4 p.m. and 9 a.m. But item 2 for that same thing it needed to have weekends and holidays from 4 p.m. to 9 a.m., not Saturdays and Sundays. It's sort of, so it needs to be weekends and holidays both. And then the opposite is what's allowed, and that's under the exemptions, 82070. D, the exemptions need to be allowed in the times that the prohibitions are not allowed. So I think this was the typo, which is 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays and holidays. It needs to be weekends and holidays. So essentially we were creating a problem with Sundays. And I think based on the conversations we'd had, Sundays seemed to be, we wanted to have the opportunity to work on Sunday. Okay.
All right, got that. Thank you.
So I actually had one question then on 8.20.120 exceptions. In the administration section, we talk about the town manager, and then on the next page, we talk about planning director. Was that an oversight, or do we want those to be?
No, I noticed that as well. I thought we were changing it to planning director.
Correct.
And I think it got caught later, but it didn't get caught earlier.
Good eye.
So A1 and A2 need to say planning director. So 820.120 A1.
And A2.
I also, there's no verb in C2. It says operating or permitting the operation of any mechanically powered tools between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 4 p.m. and 9 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. But the is prohibited on the bottom is lined out. Is
Prohibited Act 820.
C2. Under the prohibited. 820.060 C2.
So what you're saying is it should read operating or permitting, or permitting
Operating
the
or-
operation of mechanically powered
Operating or permitting the
tools.
operating or permitting the operation.
is it meant to be
Yeah.
is prohibited?
You can leave it's
Okay,
prohibited in
so,
there.
so is prohibited is on the last line, but it's meant to be in there, correct? Okay, all right, I thought it was, it's just a
We change
typo.
Saturdays and Sundays to weekends and holidays.
And so Saturdays is weekends and holidays. Saturdays and Sundays are weekends and holidays, okay. Weekends and holidays. And that will make everything really nice and consistent, so thank you.
Got it. Feel safe.
The only other question I had with respect to making everything nice and consistent is that section, those two sections that say the operation of any tools or equipment. I like how you crossed out the kind of laundry list thing in C2, saws, blah, 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 and it's just any mechanically powered tool. But you didn't do that on the next page with the exemptions on on 2D, and I was wondering if that was intentional, or could you do the same thing on that one and get rid of the laundry lists because one has a laundry list and one doesn't? Or was there a reason why you didn't take the same approach on that one?
So you want D to read the operation of any power tools generically?
I was actually wondering, I
I don't
was...
think it was intentional on our
It
part.
wasn't intentional, so it could be using consistent language, I think, would be helpful, because that way it is consistent.
And you're saying the capital D machinery, where are you?
I'm on, I wish this said
82070 D.
82072D.
Or it's not 2D, it's just D. It's not sub 2.
Oh, sorry, right. I'm sorry, 82070D. It reads, the operation of any tools or equipment used in construction, drilling, repair, alteration, or demolition work.
Give me the number, okay,
Under exemption.
Under exemptions, item D. So the other one says well, I guess no, the other one does say the operation of any tools or equipment used in construction, demolition work. So one of them says the operation of tools or equipment used in construction, demolition work, or in property maintenance work. And that one says the operation of any tools or equipment used in construction, drilling, repair, alteration, or demolition work, but it doesn't include property maintenance work.
Well, but it includes all of them.
okay, so you want property maintenance in there, right?
I would make them the same. I would just say the operation of any tools or equipment used in construction, demolition work, or property maintenance work.
Make them the same on the inclusion, with the inclusion of all.
I don't know why you need drilling and repair and alteration. I don't understand. They're all construction, so you don't.
We would redact that.
So I think what we're saying is
Yes, property maintenance, right.
that C1 and 2 from the prohibited acts, that
D.
D on the exemptions is kind of the mirror.
Right.
And so we should have the same what's allowed, what it is, and then the time periods need to sort of make up the 24 hours.
Because it's basically saying the stuff that we say you can't do on this page, we say you can do on that page because it's an emergency, so they should be the same things.
It's during
Good
the
work.
hours it's
I'm sorry.
available.
Yeah.
So I think the one funny thing about this, that modification, even though I agree with it, is it takes out leaf blowers completely, which is the whole reason. So.
But it adds in property maintenance. It adds in weed whackers.
It does. So but somebody needs to
lawnmowers.
explain that when it goes
We're
back up to the town council.
expanding the scope.
Thanks a lot. I'm going to have to explain it to the council.
That's one of those whereases that you put on the resolution that says whereas.
I mean, I hate to do this. The other way you can do it is define those terms, and you can put all of that laundry list. But I think we want to get away from laundry list because that's sort of with these use permits in the central commercial. Exactly.
It's like a dog washing business that doesn't.
So that needs to be the justification for why we've taken the laundry list out, is because it just creates false constraints down the road.
And creates more work for staff and us because it has to come back to us because it wasn't on the list.
All right.
So if we make it
We're good.
with the intent, we're keeping your work down.
Are manual tools, hand tools, by implication covered here, like hammers? I mean,
Mechanically.
well, should be.
Well, I think
Noisy
you could,
tools?
but you could say the tools or equipment used in construction. Those are tools and equipment. Then there's a comma and it says mechanically powered tools. So
That's because the
they're
other.
two separate things.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Because C1 is tools and equipment used in construction. C2 is operation mechanically powered.
Although C
tools.
does say domestic power tools as the heading, which by inference would mean everything 1 and 2 are related to power tools.
So it's a title, not a.
Well, I was recalling a discussion about non-powered tools, and I thought that what you agreed is that you didn't necessarily want to prohibit those so people could use them, but you felt that if someone was using a non-powered tool and it became a problem, it would be handled under the complaint investigation noise measurement procedure. That's what I remembered. Do you remember
Thank you for remembering that.
It was well worth
But I
having
don't
you
know
stay
if
for that.
You know, you weren't voting on things, so I don't know whether you reached consensus on that or.
So the complaint investigation is the 82130?
No, it's
No.
820040. So it's upon receipt of a complaint from a citizen, the chief of police or his designated representative equipped with a sound level meter, investigates based on a list of things that they evaluate.
Didn't we have a conversation about 2 or 3 within a particular, so that I think we did have the conversation where we gave an additional remedy or an additional that was beyond having to get out there with the meter.
I think we did. I think we were concerned that if we said 2 complaints, that one neighbor just, has it out and keeps calling and complaining, and we thought, 2 different.
Does staff remember?
I think we spoke about two or more complaints, but then there was a comment made that after the designated time, even if there's 1 complaint, it should be shut down. So I think, so we kind of rejected the 2 or 3 complaints, said 1 complaint and that's it.
And is that reflected in the?
No, you backed away from the number of complaints, that the stipulations in here are what they are, and they take hold no matter how many number of complaints.
And I think by actually making this a broader, taking out the laundry list, it does allow for that judgment to be made that, there's not going to be an argument, well, this is a leaf blower, so it's okay. It's, you're making noise, and that's the concern.
I think I'm good with it.
So, was there a so the idea today was to edit, and then the next time it would be a resolution? Or is there a resolution on here? There is, okay. Sorry. I just focused on the red lines and didn't get to the resolution.
In the top of the resolution, in the title, proposed changes to chapter noise ordinance, it all kind of ran together and was misspelled. Ordinance.
And just so you know, the chair does come and sign these, so she'll check and make sure we've made those corrections before she signs it.
So one of the questions that I have on the resolution is you do have a whereas, the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas down here talks about health impacts and particulate matter. And we're adopting a noise ordinance, and I believe that we decided that we were not doing this for those reasons. So I'm not sure why that's in there.
Okay, well, I remember that you discussed that. It's fine to take it out, but what you discussed is that you are kind of regulating it by limiting the hours that people can. There was discussion about that, but if you want to take it out.
Let me add to that, if I may. I remember it was hard to define through empirical data the health impacts. But I think in a more general, broad sense, to the extent that dust might cause, and probably does cause, health impacts, particularly for asthmatic people like Mr. Douglas Green, who brought this up in the beginning, this is working towards mitigating the disturbance in the environment without getting into the woods of how that happens. You're having fewer hours there where there may be an impact from air particulates. So in the spirit of how you're visiting the whole revisions, you may not be specifically addressing that issue, but in the spirit of limiting the time, you're minimizing any potential health impact.
I don't want to mean to beat a dead horse, but if I wanted to build a little shed behind my house starting at 10 p.m. and all I'm doing is pounding nails, is there anything in here that says that I can't do it? I'm not using any power tools.
In fact,
the heading on C is construction domestic power tools. Is there any control over hand tools?
Well, there's the complaint investigation noise measurement procedure where the police chief goes out and reviews the type of noise source, the location of the noise source relative to the complainant's property, the time period during which the noise source is considered by the complainant to be intrusive, the total duration of the noise, date and time of the noise. So there's a process if someone's making noise, at an unacceptable hour.
But what he's saying is that if I'm the neighbor who's having a problem, I can't point at the noise ordinance and say, you're out of compliance. Yes, you're making a loud noise, but it's not a power tool, and therefore you're not out of compliance with the noise ordinance. I mean, they can investigate it and document it, but how does one?
Well, I'm not reading
Could the heading
that
C
way.
just say construction / demolition / property maintenance tools?
That section isn't listed under tools or anything. It's just, it's before all that. It's 8.20.040.
No, but that just stipulates what they have to do when a complaint is made. It doesn't stipulate are they in or out of compliance.
Well, we got tasked with doing this based on power equipment and leaf blowers. So while what you're bringing up, Morgan, might in fact be an interesting hypothetical case, it seems to me that the town, in terms of just normal disturbances, if someone's building at 10 o'clock at night, and we weren't able to mitigate that through our actions through the code right now, then we'd be back in here going through an exercise on hand tools at 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
But I mean, the header.
And there is
the header for prohibited
let's make sure
acts.
he sees the whole process, because that is, you're saying, Linda, that's covered.
If there's a complaint.
If there's a complaint.
But I think if we, and this isn't new language, the header always was construction domestic power tools, and C1 was the operation of any tools or equipment used in construction or demolition work. So this discrepancy, if it's going to be a discrepancy, has always been there. But I would interpret it, it doesn't matter what the header says, it's what that C1 is the definition. The header doesn't define what the title isn't the.
Or do you just rename construction, demolition,
and property
tools,
maintenance tools,
and get rid of the power?
Yeah.
Just get rid of the word power. And again, we're moving to more.
But
general.
I mean, we're saying property maintenance underneath, so that applies under C1. Do we need to make the header?
I think Shelby also found the remedy in another section. Push your button.
In 820.050 exterior noise limits, in number 2, it talks about any noise, any source of sound within and the duration of it, and then under B1, it It says, in the event of an alleged offensive noise as judged by the chief of police or his or her designated representative, contains a steady, audible tone such as a whine, screech, or hum, or is a repetitive noise such as hammering or riveting, or contains music or speech, the standard limit set forth in the table below shall be reduced 5 decibels. So it's addressing noise.
At all hours.
And hammering.
Any noise at any time, if it's exceeding noise levels or duration. And so it's covered.
So this prohibited thing says you can't use power tools even if they're totally quiet during these hours. We don't care how noisy they are, you just can't use them. That's the next part. Okay. And public comment on this? We kind of went straight to discussion. Should we go to public comment? Would anybody object if we went to public comment? Would you? Yeah, I was like, please come forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, Chairperson and the Planning Commission. My name is Marcia Wildvine, and I'm at 399 Forest Avenue here in Fairfax. I'm slashing parts of my speech because it's late, and I know that you've made lots of effort so far. But I'm speaking up in hopes that you consider the duration of continuous construction noise generated by one property. In my case, my neighbors, the new owners of 40 Forest Terrace, have generated high decibel construction noise up to 9 hours of each day, often 6 days a week, for the last 2 consecutive years. The owners work outside their home during the construction and have suffered none of the pain of the noise they generate. However, my family, the tenants that shared our duplex home, and my neighbors, by the current ordinance, have had no way to be able to help us. So in the past 24 months, 3 tenants have moved out of our duplex home because they could not stand the constant chaos of the noise next door. I eliminated their personal stories and to make things more brief, but there were young families with babies and infants, and they suffered pretty serious consequences. So in short, for the first time in 16 years, we are no longer renting out our duplex home. My family, however, has suffered through it all because we cannot just give notice and move out. Though we really did get desperate enough and had a realtor come over, and we even considered moving out of our home and looked at other rentals. So this kind of noise has damaged our personal lives, and it's damaged my health. My doctor has seen me and said it's like I have post-traumatic stress syndrome, that my body is in a constant state of vigilance to steel myself against like the jarring sound of a jackhammer or the screech of the skill saw. I actually wear construction quality earplugs in my own home, and I try to leave the house as much as possible when the noise really is unbearable. But I'm disabled by fibromyalgia, and there's a lot of days I simply can't leave the house. We keep hoping that this is the last construction project that our neighbors are going to undertake. But I've just found out the owners of 40 Forest Terrace have applied for yet another permit for yet another very large, lengthy project. And I guess that's what I'm asking tonight, is for a way that we may be more empowered to protect ourselves from its emotional and physical damage. So noise and its detrimental effects on our well-being, both physical and emotional, scientifically proven. But laws to put some controls on increasingly loud world are still perceived by many as infringing on individual rights and individual freedom. Not long ago, the rights of cigarette smokers were considered a personal freedom above the rights of non-smokers. And I see through this current situation that our right to be protected from noise and its harmful health effects is very similar. So I don't know what you can do. I'm certainly not qualified to speak for that, but I urge you to consider the long-term effects when you give permits out to the neighbors, or at least in my situation, perhaps put something on the books so I can call the police and they can do something. I'm really not asking you to penalize normal work of homeowners or even home builders. 2 houses were built 100 feet from my home. None of us complained. I feel that most of our neighbors care about our well-being and self-regulate out of consideration. But for the few of us that don't, and because I see the changing demographics in Fairfax means more new owners can afford the cost of endless construction to make mansions out of what they bought as simple homes. So I ask that you provide legal means, some sort, to help us protect our rights to enjoy our property, at least be able to stay home, protect our health, and pursue happiness. Thank you for your time, and thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to thank you for coming in. We did speak on the phone about this. Thank you. I didn't have a chance to recognize who you were. And it is true that there's been a long period of construction at the house next door. There is nothing in our code at the moment that limits how long a project takes or is allowed to take to completion. That's something that we're going to be revisiting in the building code. The building code will be rolled over on January 14. The new, every 3 years it gets upgraded. So we've taken this comment under consideration. We've also been aware of it before tonight, and because some projects just go on and don't get finished. So we will be making staff recommendations. I guess if there's a little silver lining tonight, what they're moving towards, what the town is moving towards, is at least reducing the hours of construction.
Yes.
Okay. And then when the property that we're discussing comes back in for the next permit, you'll be noticed. You should come back to this room, to this process, because in that individual project, even though there's no stipulation in the building code at this point, there may be an opportunity for the commission to entertain stipulations on the construction schedule for what they're asking to do next.
Oh, good. That's good. I'm kind of at my wit's end, so I take the silver lining.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
Could you elucidate what is going on next door? I mean, is it all permitted work and
Yes.
the owners
Yes.
doing it themselves?
Yes.
I don't remember that house at all.
I'm sorry.
I don't remember a permit request from that.
Sorry.
Or are they building permits?
There was a building permit issued, and there was a question about a deck also that came back in on it.
Oh, that house.
Yes, and the hot tub and all that. And then now they have not, it hasn't gotten to you yet. They're submitting an application. I don't know if the application's complete or not.
I think it's probably going to be on the July agenda.
July agenda, maybe, if it's deemed complete. So that's coming back in, and that one you'll have a little bit of opportunity to address the concerns of the neighbor and how they've been impacted.
Is it an owner-builder permit? Is that what they're doing? Or is it a
We'd have
licensed contractor, or what?
We'd have to check. I don't know. I don't believe the owner is out there hammering himself, right? They've hired they work off-site and hire some people to come in and do the construction.
So as it relates to this is basically the exemption D, which says that you can do construction, you can operate tools or equipment in construction between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 9 to 4 on weekends and holidays.
Yeah, other towns.
And it's exempt from the noise.
The way other towns have
limitations.
handled it is they've set a time period. You have to finish your construction within a year or within 6 months. That's how and then you get fined, pretty hefty fines if you don't finish within a set amount of time. Because this is America and people are allowed to improve their properties. But we do have these weekend, these people aren't weekend warriors, but people do drag their projects out. They don't have any money, so they stop and then they start and they stop and they start. And that's kind of what's been going on here. They've done a lot of little projects, new fences, that didn't need building permits, but they were still hammering and making noise.
Right.
So it's been a long time.
Just for my education on, So there are exemptions that say when you can do things, but the exterior noise limits, that's a receiving limit, not a production limit. And so this says in a residential zone, you can, if it exceeds 50 decibels during the day, and that special condition, if it's consistent, it can be reduced by 5 decibels, so that'd be 45 decibels. If it's being received at 45 decibels at the property line, that's not exempt.
Right, but the building official's been out and doesn't think that it does.
Right, but there is something, it's not meeting.
It's not exceeding what's allowed.
50
during
decibels.
the hours that it's allowed, right?
That
I think the issue is how long it's gone on.
But even,
All day, every day.
but my understanding from the way that I'm reading the exemptions, here's the exterior noise limits, but the exemptions are exempt from all provisions of this chapter, including the exterior noise limit provision. That's why I'm reading those exemptions, is that those exemptions say that these activities are exempt from all provisions. No? What are they exempt from?
If it was, I think you still, 82050 gives you at your property line, it's not the noise that's being generated, it's what's being received. That's the way I've always read it.
That I agree with. I'm questioning at all time. I'm questioning the at all times. Like, can I be as loud as I want between the hours of
This has daytime
8 and
limits.
6? Because it's exempt from all provisions
Construction
of
noise is exempt, yeah, because it's.
Because that's what we're saying, is that
loud.
construction noise is completely and exempt from limits between the hours of 8 a.m. and
it's
6 p.m. You
very
can be as
difficult to
loud
limit
as you want.
that and allow construction to occur. You can't legally prohibit all construction, so the way other towns have dealt with it is trying to limit the duration of the construction.
And that's something that could be done on any individual project permit. That could be a recommended condition of the permit.
We can
It
check
doesn't
with
have to be in the
we
town
will
code. It
check
can
with
be-
legal before we bring this one back to you.
You can put it in there, it might be hard to enforce.
Well, we'll check with legal in terms of our ability to do that on a project based on history when there's
But
been discomfort.
If you said it had to be, because you have to initiate the work within a year or else the permit goes away, right? So you could also say you have to complete it within
Once
a year.
construction
And if
begins.
you haven't,
Right,
you need to come back for
right.
a permit again. It seems like that would be, you're not denying the opportunity, you're just
Right.
putting
And it would make
constraints on it.
Another way to go about it too is if a project goes on for a certain amount of time without an inspection, the permit expires. It's typically 6 months. It's another way to do it.
You would need to have that, and you would need to have that on a project-by-project basis, not part of the code, because every project is different. So you couldn't put as part of the code that every project has to be completed within a year, because they're all different. So
Well, you could, then you,
Actually, they do that.
Yeah, and you could
Other
then-
towns have done it, and then if you don't finish, you get fined every day that you go beyond that time limit.
and then when you're conditioning a project, if that project is going to take longer than the prescribed time, then you create an exception.
that would be helpful to know from legal counsel, whether it would be better to put it on a project-by-project or to build it into this code, this noise stipulation.
Yeah, we'll be making recommendations in terms of the code update, and then in terms of this immediate situation, when the other one comes back in. And again, the slight silver lining is what you've changed now is construction can't go between 6 and 8 in the evening or past in the afternoon. So you've cut down the hours of interruption for this person's piece.
Any other discussion on this item besides the amendments that we've made, or any other? We were on to the resolution, so I don't, if there was any other conversations about the resolution. The run-on, right. And you all are satisfied that you did a really good job in our prior discussions about itemizing the issues that the council had wanted us to deal with, and it appears that those are all taken care of in here, so that's kind of the guidelines that you were using.
We used that as a checklist when we wrote it.
Hearing.
So we can, we're actually, because it's an action, it's listed under action, we can take an action tonight with the amendments.
Yep, and you're passing it up to council.
So I'd be happy to make a motion to approve.
Could I, wait, before you do that,
Go
sorry.
ahead, sorry.
The last whereas on the resolution page, we were adding the holidays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. only during weekends. Should that read weekends and holidays?
Yes,
Yep.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we
Did you guys
added
get that?
the very last whereas, where it says.
Not the very, on the, yeah, it is the
Yeah,
last one.
where it says during weekends, you have to add and holidays, because that's what we had before. Now, continue.
So, is there we just are approving the resolution, that's basically what?
That's
we're
correct.
doing. Okay, so motion to approve resolution 13-4, reflecting the proposed changes to the town noise ordinance, based on the red lines and additional modifications tonight.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved.
And let the record show that Arijit Sen
Was
was
presiding over
involved
this.
in the modification of a zoning, or of a town code, which is making law in California.
Exactly. Thank you very much. It was passed under your watch. Thank you so
I'm
much.
glad to know that we're international on the television, not just local. It's international TV.
Yep, we're in Fairfax, a little backwater.
All right. Let's move on to the minutes from the May 20th Planning Commission meeting.
I'm ready to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Multiple seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And one abstention because of an absence.
Okay, so you're going to abstain?
Yeah. Okay. Planning Director's report.
I'm going to be really quick. Last Wednesday in this room, on June 12th, I was asked to moderate a discussion between the Good Earth and the neighbors. It went well, I believe, for an hour and a half. In short, thanks to Commissioner Ketchum, we focused on compliance with the rules as they are to start with. And the Good Earth has agreed to block off the 2 driveways, either with chain or sawhorses, to limit the early morning deliveries between 5 and 7 to the 3 trucks that are allowed. A 60-foot grocery truck in the 5 o'clock hour and 2 40-foot trucks in the 6 o'clock hour. In addition to gaining compliance with the agreement that had been in place, they are going to take a next step to work with the neighbors and the leaders of those neighbors to address the noise impacts coming from those 3 early trucks. Those would be backup beepers, slamming into the loading gate, noise, loudspeakers, release of air brakes, which is probably going to be the most challenging one to mitigate. And they're going to try to reduce the noise from those 3 trucks before 7 in the morning. And thirdly, if they can actually eliminate the noise from the 5 o'clock 60-foot grocery truck, as a reward, the neighborhood is game, at least those that showed up, to releasing the restriction on trucks from 6 o'clock on. So the middle ground was, if you recall, staff was recommending eliminating the truck in the 5 o'clock hour, and they were actually asking for the elimination of all restrictions. The middle ground between the neighborhood, which was represented in the staff's recommendation, and the Good Earth is, if they succeed, they get to keep the 5 o'clock truck and then have carte blanche after 6. So they both have a common goal, which is to improve the environment for the neighborhood, and in so doing, the Good Earth would be rewarded with lifting the restrictions from 6 o'clock on to accommodate what are also a lot of small trucks and bread trucks and things that they need to accommodate early on. So compliance, improvement, reward.
How are they going to document or proof that they've achieved that goal to be able to grasp their reward?
They're working together, and it was agreed, good question, it was agreed that when they had together, the Good Earth and the leaders of the neighborhood felt that it had been achieved, then the Good Earth would request another visit between you all to relax the conditions. And in the interim, if we were having a dispute over how things were going, there would be a meeting of the representatives, that'd be Mark and Al for the store, and Bob Mellon and Steve Franks for the neighborhood, in our office to discuss things. Oh, excuse me, I beg your pardon. And it's not a done deal, but the neighbors, under the leadership of Bob Mellon and Steve Franks, offered to put in a real-time cam to monitor on-the-ground noise, because there was a little bit of gray area whether some of the noise that the neighborhood thought was coming from the Good Earth was in fact coming from the Good Earth or not. So, and they're still, I don't think it's 100% that they're going to take that slightly expensive effort of a couple $1,000 to put that in, but that's an opportunity that if they need that, they'll do that.
That would be really helpful, because I would hope that they could come to an agreement, but I could imagine that the applicant feels that he has met the no noise thing and there's a dispute and still wants to come before us and make his case. And then, but the neighbors, or that maybe there's a few neighbors that don't agree with him. So without having some sort of objective metric, like there's been no complaints received by the police department, or and that's all I was worried about, was that it basically says that he can't come and ask for that unless he's sure that there's no neighbors that are going to show up to contest it.
Well, at this point, we have representatives of the neighbors in the form of these two people, and I think they're all on the same page to get to where the neighborhood has more peace and the Good Earth has more opportunity to take early morning deliveries. So they left this room in the spirit of cooperation, and I know that there are always ifs, ands, and buts out there that you can never hit all the buttons on. And there probably will be some people or some, I mean, both sides, the best decision sometimes, both sides don't get everything they want, and in fact, if that middle ground is reached, both sides won't get all they want. There'll still be the early truck, one early truck, and yet more trucks after 6. So they both have something to gain here. Oh, and finally, we are...
Town planner and town mediator.
Anyway, moderator. Anyway, and, sorry, Morgan?
I just had a question. I remember on the Karakabi project, it was just went on and on and on because no time limit was set for when they, had to resolve what was going on there, and it was being brought up, and it was costing the town a lot of money. You know what I'm talking about? The housing that was over by Delano's, the 16 unit in the parking lot there. And it went on ad infinitum, ad nauseum, because there was no limit, apparently, set on how long that item could be occupy the time of staff. And I just wondered, neighbors and Good Earth, is there a way to kind of limit that? What I'm driving at is what's really happening is there's all these unfunded mandates that have been enacted, everything from public employee retirement plans to their medical and that kind of thing, and it's all fine and well to be politically correct, but if it's, not affordable, I begin to wonder. Like earlier this evening when I mentioned, why require a survey? I mean, it's a 5-foot setback. Why make them spend even $1,500 for a boundary shoot? It costs money, and people don't have money these days. So I was just curious: can the people in the neighborhood of the Good Earth just keep taking pot shots at it and try to extort whatever they can out of Good Earth?
Well, our job is often mitigating the rights of individuals against individuals, or individuals against the collective good. That's what we do. That's part of our business. That's part of what we did tonight. Having said that, with this issue, it took a long time for this to get traction, to get to the point where we had that meeting, and there was a lot of frustration with the primary individual, who felt his life was getting interrupted. So
yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't appreciate what you guys have done.
No, I know.
I know. At some point, enough's enough.
No, I know. I understand, but that's our job here, and we are directed on our work programs with what's the most important thing. Some things get put in front. I mean, this exercise we just got done, that was a lot of effort. That was a lot of work, staff time to do that. I would argue that, the Good Earth issue was maybe even more pressing than the leaf blower issue in some ways. Not that that wasn't an important issue, it's just who's in front. But hopefully we made some progress with this issue.
But essentially, a use permit can be contested at any time, again and again and again. There's no statute of limitations, or there's nothing that says, once we've said that they're compliant, that's the end of it.
Well, see, part of the problem was they were not compliant with the conditions of approval. That was the shtick, and the applicant wanted to have it relaxed, and they weren't playing by the rules, which was so valuable when you chimed in, Brandon, because that was just like a crystal moment, and that helped me articulate, what are we here to do? We're here to make sure everyone's playing by the rules. Now, beyond that, what do you both have to gain by cooperating? But I hear what you're saying. It's just that's the nature of our business. That's what we do, and it is difficult when you're short-staffed as we are, and we get a lot of grief because sometimes from the public that wants us to move faster on code compliance, for example. Code compliance is a long, arduous process. We try to get people to comply. We don't want to just punish. We want to get people to do the right thing. It's not easy, and as the regulatory environment is not getting any easier also, we know that. It's a challenge.
Maybe Linda can refresh my memory about the whole idea of the use permit and, for substandard lots. I mean, we hear these things, well, the lot is 6,000 square feet, but because of the slope, it really, to comply, has to be 8,400,000 square feet. It's just, these numbers are just crazy. Tell me one more time where that all came from.
Well, it predated me, so I don't really know, but I see both sides of it. I see projects that come through that I think there's no way this could negatively impact a neighbor like 62 Valley. And because of our topography and the way we have valleys and things, you can be miles. Remember 62 Valley and the neighbor way uphill on
and the $150,000 driveway?
Yeah. So whatever happened back in the 70s when they adopted a slope ordinance, they put in the town code that if you don't meet a minimum size based on your slope, you need to either get a use permit or a hill area residential development permit.
There's no way to deal with that. It's like $830 often for nothing that costs.
Yeah. Well, it all depends on who you talk to, whether they think that's a fair ordinance, because there's a lot of people out there that would say they think it's the greatest thing. And the hill area development, you have unstable slopes in the hillsides. And so I know it seemed onerous to try to make them get soils reports, but this site, the 271 Tamalpais, has had slides. There's already active soil movement there that they've had to fix once. So, even though it was a pretty extensive deck system, So, I mean, you can always make your codes more stringent or less stringent, and it's really up to the citizens. I can find you citizens that think it's onerous, just like you do, and then I can find other citizens. The neighbor next door is very grateful that you guys are requiring that engineering, because he is concerned. He's put a lot of money into his home, and if this deck slides, it will impact him. So,
You know, I mean, it's just in keeping in the public purpose. I can recite cases up and down the coast and the, Coastal Commission, when we look at coastal communities in Laguna Beach and San Juan Capistrano and Malibu that don't have those ordinances or didn't have those ordinances in place, and all of the erosion and the hillside loss and the public costs and the private costs that go in place. So it's meant to serve a purpose, whether it serves the purpose that it was intended over time and whether it should be addressed and changed, but I mean, it's there for the public good, in theory.
Forgive me for sounding professorial, but I don't think you can separate politics from policy and policy from design, and if to do it right after you have experimented with design or have design going in place, then you go back to the politics. How successful was it? And then those politics drive revisions to the policy. And it's a continuum. It's a continuum. So I would recommend that rather than keeping Linda up any later, if you want to agendize revisiting this part of the code, in the effort of saving staff time.
No, but Jim, but one thing I do want to say is I think that what the town could do, and they've never been willing to do it because they don't trust their staff, is to set up a zoning administrator process that's quicker, less expensive, and it gives staff a little more power, but
let me just couch what Linda just said. This goes back, this is a lot of baggage you're hearing from in the past. And in fact, going back to the substandard lot, you zero in, Morgan, on a very astute point, is that most of the parcels, because of their size, which are just the normal size, but the way the code is written, they are substandard as a rule. So they have to go through this process. Well, that, if you don't want change, that actually helps to stop change. On the other hand, neighborhoods can be completely ruined by big house McMansion syndrome, which is a fight going on even in Sausalito, where I was living until recently. So it's a balance. It's a balancing act, and it's messy. It's messy. But I think, Linda, when you say the town doesn't trust staff, I think she's talking history. I think the town is come around.
They could change their code to give staff.
Yeah, but I mean, and that is a political question on policy, and that's what you actually are wordsmithing policy tonight, but that will be codified by those elected officials representing the town, and that's the appropriate body to make these decisions. But a zoning administrator would certainly help. It would really slipstream things.
You know that every election, they all run and they say they want to make the process less restrictive, and as soon as they get up there, they start adding more ordinances, restricting the hours people can use tools, et cetera, et cetera.
We don't run for office. They just appoint us.
It's late. Let the record show that we have a very overworked civil servant.
Is there anything else in the director's report?
No.
Okay, the only last thing we have is discussion items. And are there any discussion? The only thing I have to say, though, sorry, we have to agendize the review of the year one and ongoing general planning commission responsible items for our next meeting, because I'm on GPIC and I've been asked. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's late and we have very, very busy staff, so that's why we've got lots of people up here.
When there's 9 items on the agenda,
yes,
you don't
tonight
have
would
to
not have
agendize
been the night for us to do this anyhow. So.
I did go through for the Planning Commission Design Review Board sections, and I triaged it, and I went through on what we've done, what I feel are the priority items, and what I think unless we have more staff and time, we can put on the back burner. And I've got that work ready to present to you. Sorry.
Then we can go through it very quickly next time and hope that there's not a whole bunch of other items. So that's fine.
And it is speeding up. Things are speeding up. We're getting an uptick right now.
In applications and stuff. Okay. Well, hopefully that'll be a quick thing because you've done so much work on it already. Thank you.
And I invite you to visit our town budget when it comes out because thanks to our new town manager, Garrett Toy, he had us put in some performance highlights, and it shows the actual number of building permits, phone calls, emails, counter calls, admin backup, what our goals, what we accomplished, what our goals are in our very small department, or what Garrett says, one of our larger departments. Anyway, thanks.
Entertain a motion to adjourn if there's anyone who'd like to go home. Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Aye. So moved. Motion to adjourn. Approved. Thank you.
Well, you know, Jim, the real value, one of the real values of an intern is shortly before he leaves, you can just blame all this stuff